Musical fade out, Charles.
You got it right.
Seems to be working smoothly today. Very, very unusual. Oh, darn, but I forgot to knock that thing out of the way before the handshake. It's okay.
That's all right.
It's all right. We're working on the smoothing out the technical rough edges. How are you, Charles?
I'm very well, thanks. It's basically a steam bath out there, Jason. It's a steam bath.
Yeah, it's very humid. It's been a weird summer, I would say, Charles. It was kind of cold yesterday and rainy and then hot. Who knows? There's obviously the huge hurricane that's about to hit.
Yeah. Well, and in unrelated but somewhat related news to the whole issue of production, I was walking down my street, and we won't mention what it is, and I see these signs up for, we're going to be filming. They film a lot for some reason on my street and on the adjacent street. But they filmed today, God Friended Me, that new CBS
oh yeah,
sitcom.
I saw an ad for that on a bus or something.
Yeah, and it's all getting heavily promoted. And there's that company you probably know of called Haddad's Trailers. And whoever Haddad is, that Haddad dude is making a lot of money.
They got all those production trailers. That's mostly in New York. They're not in LA that much.
It's based in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It says on the trucks, but they have, gigantic trucks everywhere. They must charge CBS or wherever the production studio a lot of money.
I have a little hint for you here, Charles. When you see the one that says Desi and Lucy,
those are the stars.
No, that's the bathrooms.
Oh, okay.
Men and women.
For the star.
For the crew.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for the crew. You mean the stars get their own bathrooms?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
On a proper show.
Good.
If I could, Charles, I'd provide you with your own bathroom.
That's
but
okay.
We're doing things here on a budget. We want to keep everything, as tight as possible. Put all the money up on the screen.
There you go.
People are sponsoring Crowdsource the Truth on patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. They want every dollar going into the news reporting and the information that we provide. And of course, the art department. I know you're always excited to see what I come up with each week. And I have to say, I've seen this film, although it was a long time ago, and I don't really remember too much about it, but it was cool to make a little mini Trump and have all of these angry looking,
Well, you created, produced, and directed Get Trumpy,
right,
which is, the spectacle that all of us have been living through, really, especially including the president from the 18th of March 2015 when he formed his Presidential Exploratory Committee to the very present. They've been out to get him.
Yeah.
And I think we both thought that this film title was something that we could sort of use and adjust. But the art department, has done yet again another fantastic job here, putting the three, I don't even want to call them amigos, I think I should call the three unindicted co-conspirator criminals.
Exactly.
Who are sitting atop a miniature version of our 45th president, who really looks very good. So
thank you, Charles. It's become quite ridiculous how the president is just under fire and by really unconventional and just implausible measures. I was speaking with Michael Moore last night on the Only on Patreon show, More Pain.
Not the Canadian fat one.
No. I'm talking about the Pennsylvania newsman, the symbol formerly known as Thomas Paine.
All right.
And he says that he thinks the New York Times op-ed piece is fake, that there is no.
Oh, that would be great.
I think it is, and he told me a story in that interview about, what's the name of the editor of the New York Times?
Dean Backett.
Right.
Yeah.
So when Michael was working for the Hackensack Record, after he left the Hackensack Record, he created a private investigation firm, and that firm became the subject of a New York Times story. And to kind of, control the spin, they did an interview with him, and the New York Times published stuff that was totally not what he said. And he had recorded the interview. So he spoke with Dean Beckett, who was the editor of whatever, I guess it was the Times or something.
He's probably going up the ranks in the Times.
Yeah, right. People should listen to the interview to get all the details. I'm mangling it a bit right now, but the guy essentially told him, screw you, we're the New York Times.
Right.
No one's going to believe you. And I think we see them utilizing that strong arm tactic of like, let's just run this and people will believe it because we're the New York Times.
Well, in other words, what you're saying, I think, and I know you wanted to allow me to have this punchline, but what you're saying is where the New York Times motto used to be all the news that's fit to print, it's now, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. The New York Times is just out there putting up screwy information. I used to say that BuzzFeed was the Filene's Basement, the bargain discounter for the New York Times, but now I feel like the New York Times is like the dysfunctional parent of BuzzFeed.
It's redeeming attributes, cheaper than cat litter, Sunday edition.
That's exactly right. So Charles, before we get into today's presentation, I definitely want to remind people to be following you on Twitter, despite shadow banning and shouting down our friend Laura Loomer and all of the other really distasteful things that Twitter has been up to. I do still think it's important for the time being, while it remains an entity, for people to follow you by going there. You are at Charles Ortel, and they can follow you and see all the interesting news items that you're bringing to people's attention. They do seem to be restricting the growth of your followers.
Yeah, and it makes no sense. I mean, I was on Lionel, as you know, last Thursday, and that video has over 50,000 views, and typically whenever I go on something that has that much of a following, I mean, I think Lionel's up to over 200,000 subscribers.
Yeah. I
get additional followers, and this is once again stuck at 31. It's going to probably go to 31.7 because it's now 31.753. Yesterday it was 31.768, and something odd is going on here. I don't know whether it's probably some. They did shadow ban me, then they unshadow banned me, and they unshadow banned you, and they probably come up with some additional diabolical way of screening out your momentum or lessening your momentum or who knows what. But again, our target market, at least for what I'm trying to do, there's approximately 320,000 subscribers at $20,000 a year to Bloomberg. That's my target market.
Wow.
And at 31.8 out of 320, 10%, I'll take it. I'm not saying that all 31.8 of our followers, or even a small percentage, are people actually paying $20,000 a year personally for a Bloomberg screen, but that's my goal is not to become somebody with 1 million followers. I just want people who engage and care about markets and politics to follow me.
You're not going after the Katy Perry demographic.
I do like that. I like some of Katy Perry's music, but I think she is entitled to speak about politics as I am to brag about the one record I did when I was 12 years old on RCA as a choir boy.
Wait a minute now. This is new information. Stop the press.
It wasn't just me alone. I was in a choir, but it was a selective choir.
So you won't be putting on a leopard skin singlet and dancing around with a tiger in the desert, or the jungle rather.
No, but she's fun. I mean, some of her songs are pretty funny.
Yeah. The other thing that people should be doing is going over to charlesortel.com. They can communicate with you on there, send you an email by Googling charlesortel.com and contact me.
Right.
And
there actually I do have some news. The last thing that we put up was on the 6th of September 2016 on the advice of my literary agent. And my goal in all of this exposing the Clinton Foundation has been to instigate investigations by governments inside and outside this country, with a focus initially outside this country, because I gave up on the FBI and I gave up on the IRS and I gave up on the Department of Justice, and I certainly gave up on the many attorneys general in this country. And so we've had some success actually that we're going to be revealing, and I haven't pinned down a final publication date, but I'm targeting no later than October 15th, possibly earlier than that, via my site. I'm going to start dropping some large bombs.
Wow.
And we will be issuing them through my site. They are going to be lengthy reports. We have not yet decided whether we're going to charge for them or not charge for them. We may provide summaries for free and more lengthy ones for the technical people, because after all, I spent 3.5 years putting this together, and there's a lot of a lot of information that people will get, and it'll save them a lot of time. So again, on that site, www.charlesortel.com, before October 15th, and we haven't fixed the final deadline, might be a lot sooner than that, we're going to start dropping very detailed analysis, not targeted, to some people are like, so when are you going to show, when's there going to be an indictment? Not targeted for the people who just want to sit there.
Well, they get mad at you like you're the Attorney General.
Right, exactly, yeah. It's
Charles, when are you going to arrest somebody?
Yeah, what are you going to, what are you going to face down the establishment wings of both political parties in the largest economy, the largest government complex in the world by yourself and get this done for us so I don't have to worry about it? I mean, that's not a fair question. So we will, however, be laying the analysis out, and with the hope that people will share it widely, read it and share it, and push on the judges and the investigators and the attorneys general, say, what the hell? If this guy can publish this stuff for free, and it's obvious, and I understand, the summary for free, and I understand it, what the hell is taking you guys so long? You've had investigations open since January of 2018 in the FBI case, and then since July of 2016, and you had an investigation open for 4 years in 2001 and 2005. How come you can't prosecute these three people at the top of this chart?
Well,
picture?
Charles, I'm sitting here with my mouth agape because someone in the chat has just sent me a little real-time lead to some breaking news, but apparently multiple members of the NYPD have just been arrested in connection with a prostitution ring. That's quite shocking.
That's good.
And then here we've got members of 200 gang arrested for racketeering. I wonder, we're going to have to...
I wonder what black books they may uncover.
I mean, this is quite a thing, but we've just been hearing so many stories of a kind of mind-bending corruption in our law enforcement agencies.
I mean, you don't want to bring up Epstein Island, do you? I mean, or the Aberdeen Wiener laptop. I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Perhaps, we've heard for months that the NYPD had this evidence, and maybe there's something going on there where they're trying to stop it. We also heard rumors that Hillary Clinton was going to run for mayor. Of course, Anthony Weiner was running for mayor. So
that
perhaps
well,
it didn't work well, but I'm saying the desire to hold that position perhaps has some power connected with it that's not immediately obvious as far as covering up the crimes of the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah. Well, I think, in short, we're going to get into some of it today, but the intent of this poster, at least for me, was to make people aware that the powers that be have been, I think, determined to get Donald Trump, perhaps since before the time he announced for president. And it's high time for the values that have been demonstrated through the long 7-decade lives of Bill and Hillary Clinton and the shorter, almost 6 decades of Barack Obama, these values, to use Barack Obama-ism, these are not our values. That you should campaign for high office, you should betray this country, you should sell this country out for filthy lucre and for temporary political power. Those are not the American values. We don't elect presidents to do that. And if Donald Trump were to do that, I'd be just as negative on him as I am on these three bozos.
Yeah, I found it particularly disgraceful what Barack Obama said about Benghazi the other day. He said Benghazi, conspiracy theories, and that is a message that he's sending out. He was speaking at a college, I believe, and I think they're really targeting high schoolers and college-age people because they are on that cusp of becoming professionals, becoming politically involved, and they're still kind of impressionable, particularly when you're talking about someone like Barack Obama, who's idolized by many of these people. And he says, Benghazi conspiracy theory, there's millions of people now who believe, nothing happened there.
Well, of course, Hillary was the queen of telling accusers in the whole Monica Lewinsky and other matter. After Monica Lewinsky was revealed, that she went on 60 Minutes and accused the Ken Starr and the others of engaging in a vast right-wing conspiracy.
Right.
So that approach where you get to, it's really gaslighting, where you get to
Yes.
stand up, you know you've got faithful followers, or who used to have faithful followers who will believe virtually anything stupid or real that you say. You get up on your soapbox and you say it's a vast conspiracy. You're accusing, your accusers of actually engaging in precisely what you have been engaging. And so we shouldn't let the sleepy Chuck Todd and dopey Joe Scarborough and crying Chuck Schumer and fake Indian Pocahontas or whatever get away with accusing people like you and people like me of being conspiracy theorists. When what are we doing? We're not throwing wild-eyed accusations at people every week. And we've done now, this is our 103rd presentation. I want to say about 85 to 87 of them have had lengthy presentations, written presentations attached with, on average, say, let's call it 10 slides. So let's call that over 800 pages, if not more than that. We should eventually put them together in volumes or something.
Put out a book, Charles.
Well, I'm going to be doing that for sure, but we can do that as well. Yeah, this guy's an American hero.
Well,
to accuse this guy of because he's been banned now on Twitter or
That's
something.
what I was going to bring up, is that the only conspiracy theory that I'm aware of related to Benghazi was Hillary Clinton, Andrew McCabe, and others putting out the false information that the attack was motivated by a YouTube video. And I agree, it was disgraceful. The same people that attempted to leave Chris Paronto and his comrades to die and place them right in a war zone are now accusing him of espousing conspiracy theories and banning him from Twitter. It is an absolute disgrace. And I've been trying to reach Chris to get him on the show, but obviously around September 11th, he's very busy appearing on lots of different things because, of course, the attacks on New York City were devastating in so many ways and really garner most people's attention on September 11th. It's been 6 years yesterday since the devastating attack in Benghazi that resulted in the death of Ambassador Stevens and I believe three other CIA contractors. And so Chris Paronto's got to be very upset.
Oh, as he should be. Yeah. All Americans should be upset. And that whole, frankly, you should be particularly upset. I mean, here's this Egyptian Copt who did that film, that cartoon, that clearly was a joke. I mean, it was not a serious treatment. And some believe it was actually put out by, nothing goes on Egyptian state TV or the Egyptian major channels without the approval of at that time, the Morsi government.
Right.
So they put it out there to inflame passions. And we still don't know what really happened. And maybe Barack Obama himself, who was not known to be terribly detail-oriented as a president and before that, maybe he truly didn't know what happened.
You don't think he's detail-oriented, having the print on his birth certificate in two different colors and all that kind of stuff? Can't even do a forgery properly.
Yeah, exactly. Can't even rig a general election for the Clintons properly. But
what does that even mean? How do you rig the election?
Yeah, it's a scandal-free president. And of course, Hillary Clinton was one of the greatest secretaries of state ever, far better than Thomas Jefferson.
And with that, Charles, I think we're on to your presentation for the day.
Yeah, so we've actually tried to do this as a formula, and we're happy to share the formula that on the first, we want to have a catchy movie poster, we want to link it to a movie that people have heard or a production people have heard of before, and then on the first slide we want to really encapsulate the message so that, if you don't have the time to go through the whole thing, you'll take away what it is we're going to talk about here. And what we're talking about is that this was a well-orchestrated plan. This was a long-term plan. It may date back to prior to 1989 when George H.W. Bush was installed, shall we say, as president or elected president. May go all the way back to when he was vice president to put up this new world order, subvert the interests of these pesky little nations, including the United States, and create this globalist plot where unelected, very rich people can place leaders in nominal control of countries like the United States, but really stand behind the scenes and act as puppeteers. And so to do that, you've got to have willing, people like H.W. and then like the Schlickmeister, and then like W, and then like, Barack Obama. And, Hillary Clinton was all in for that, but Trumpy said, "You got to be kidding me. If you could speak to my mother, ask her how well I did listening to anybody else." He's somebody who basically thinks for himself.
I would argue that this cabal, this plan, this globalist takeover goes back to the days in 1963 when Herbert Walker Bush was standing outside the Texas Book Depository as a CIA agent and later the director of the agency. But that's for another show.
That's for another show. And then the other piece of it is that, when we speak of tolerance, and I think you actually do see this, that it's the left, and in particular, people like Pelosi and Feinstein and Barbara Boxer, and who have decided that, and for that matter, Mike Bloomberg, who've decided that there is one answer to most questions. Certainly, there is one answer, and to most major questions of our time, and it's their answer. And if you dare to come up with a different answer, you're either crazy, or deserving of being sent to re-education camp. Whereas, when you talk to people, I've had the benefit of growing up around, two very smart people. My mother has passed away, but my father's still with us, and they're people who do not accept the notion that anything is truly settled. I mean, if you think about the world of physics, my father's a physicist.
Yes.
The stuff that we would learn in school about physics in the 1960s and 70s is completely replaced. And even today, people are not really sure that they've got the answers to some of these gigantic cosmological questions. So it's not that that argument is not that you should go back and view, for example, the Constitution as a document that should constantly be reinterpreted, etc. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that, when you're trying to seek truth about a vexing, unanswered question, you need to be receptive to new ideas. You can't just shout people down because they're of a certain color or political persuasion or whatever else. And we see in the left, not in the right, the approach that, no. I'm going to take control of Silicon Valley. I'm going to then take control of Google and Facebook and Twitter, and I'm going to ban you and shadow ban you and censor you and intimidate you. And that should particularly concern the civil libertarians, the civil rights people like Alan Dershowitz and other.
They don't care.
No, they do care, I think. They do care.
Right.
Alan Dershowitz does care. But these idiots, Bernie Sanders, why isn't Bernie Sanders standing up, jumping and screaming about this? Because he's got 3 homes and a wife who's under FBI investigation, and that's why.
Well, just to make sure I understood what you were saying about the, one answer. So you believe dinosaurs did build Stonehenge, is what you're trying to say?
No, I think we.
Kidding.
No, on Stonehenge, I really don't think we know what was going on there, and I think that there's a lot. Instead of deciding that history doesn't matter, history matters a great deal. I believe that past generation, we're going to getting a little bit off topic here, but I believe that past generations and this generation, we think of ourselves as very modern people, at least I do, living in an exciting modern era. 100 years from now, or 30 years from now, people are going to say, those dinosaurs, those idiots, what did they know? And so, if you take the view that in every past generation, people thought they were, the Romans had one hell of an organization dating back before the birth of Christ, centuries. They didn't exactly think of themselves back then as idiots and stupid and not understanding science and what. And so, let's go back and treat the past with reverence and ask ourselves, what are we missing? What did those people know? What great secrets did they learn? And let's go back and re-examine the past. Yeah. That's not what the intolerant left wants to do. They want to erase the past, create a new future that, where they dictate everything. They take your assets, they take your freedoms away. And that should really concern everybody in the political spectrum. We need to reject this globalist, class of people, the Bezoses and, these Warren Buffetts, the Bill Gateses, etc., and Soros, who stand behind in the shadows, pulling the strings on all these puppets. That's not what our founders fought and gave their lives for. They fought for a participatory, not democracy, Republican form of government, where you would have a check, in these 2 houses. You have, 3 co-equal branches of government, not Hillary Clinton, the smartest woman in the world, dictating, what Jason Goodman how much kombucha Jason Goodman has in a given week.
Yeah,
You know?
try to keep it to one a day or it gets excessive.
Yeah.
You know, Charles, and towards that, what you're saying, the Barack Obama comments are particularly relevant because, you know, today's news becomes tomorrow's history, and he's trying to control people's perception of that whole Benghazi event, which, as you have frequently said, I don't believe we yet fully know exactly what happened there, as with 9/11 from 17 years ago, and you're talking about things that arguments within physics. Certainly quantum physics is a growing field that's not fully understood and was laughed at when it was first introduced. That wasn't even 50 years ago.
Well, I think actually, sadly, that's the history of most inventions that were revolutionized. And people scoff at them initially. That's ridiculous. When you hear that, that's when frankly, when I hear that happen, I want to go back and check out what that person is saying, because more often than not, they see something that the establishment does not see.
Right.
So with that, we can maybe jump to the... So this is an important slide, and I don't know how many subscribers you're up to now, Jason. Are you making some progress? Or
I think we're at 67,500 on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel, and we've got over 1,000 Patreon sponsors right now, which is very good.
That's excellent.
I want to thank the generous Patreon sponsors.
Indeed, and so it's very important for people to understand, particularly people living outside the United States of America, that thanks to our, not really simply our founders, because it came in the Bill of Rights, that I think was 1792 from memory. I could have that year wrong, but we have a First Amendment right to express our opinion. And we try to do is not just sit. I happen to love that movie Coming to America and the barbershop scene, where people are just spouting off. Those are.
Ain't never met Martin Luther King.
So that's not what we're doing. We're not just spouting off, guesses. In this show, what we try to do is we try to lay out, and this show comes to you as part of a body of evidence. Now, this is the 103rd of our videos together, where you can go back and check and see what we said before. Sometimes we make mistakes. Last week I made a mistake. Where I accused George Washington University of graduating Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and one of our very good viewers, I won't say his name, sent me an email, thank you for this, and said, no, it was Boston College, which will please a good friend of mine who's a graduate of Holy Cross and does not like Boston College, who whooped up on Holy Cross this past Saturday in football by like 62-14 or whatever. But anyway, we lay out here a body of evidence. We encourage our viewers to pull these presentations down, to print them out, to follow the links. You can just import them to your computer and you get the links right away, and go and check them and see for yourself what we're talking about. We try to distill it down. We target, and we beg your indulgence, those of you who are not investigators and members of the government. We're trying to target the worker bees on investigative teams around the world who are following this very closely in many countries, in many states, in our federal government. We're trying to save you time. So you have the benefit of our analysis. You could follow it for yourselves. You did already, I think, put up the playlist.
Did we? I think we were looking at it just prior to
right.
the
So
show.
maybe we should pull that.
We can take a look at it. It's a very useful resource for people who want to go back and review all of the, as you said, 103, well, 102.
Today's 103. Yeah.
Right, so we've got 102
up there.
Two up there. And also, Charles, people who are sponsoring the show for $25 or more on Patreon can choose from any of the graphics on redbubble.com and get a free mug.
That's great.
Yeah, people definitely enjoy seeing you do the halo drop and some of the various activities. And people remember, of course, that Mission Trump Possible video got dinged by CBS, who's busy firing Les Moonves.
No, well, let's think about the timing. When was that one? Let's pull up the date of that.
Sure.
That was...
Well, it was right when the Mission Impossible movie came out.
August 5th. And I think Les Moonves was CEO of CBS on August 5th and not so much anymore.
Yeah.
That'll teach CBS and anybody else from messing with Jason Goodman.
That's hopefully the case.
Right.
But I didn't really take any action. I just let them.
Well, I think it was the spirits that are out there. They crossed Jason Goodman, and there's
That's right.
There's a force in the universe.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Charles.
So one of our viewers, another one of our viewers, made an excellent suggestion, which we've been following ever since. And don't assume that we'll do that for every suggestion, because not every one of them is as good as this one is. That what we should do is really lay out some key takeaway points at the beginning of the presentation. So, Jason, I wonder if you can hit that Cornell Law School link to 18 U.S.C. 641.
Yep.
Thank you. So when you convert public money, property, or records. Now let's think about records. Where have we heard about records, Jason?
I think there are some housed right next to the stripper pole IMAX projector somewhere in Arkansas.
Well, and also in that...
Chicago.
And also in
the server in the
Chappaqua,
restroom,
D.C.
right.
So when you have a plan to convert property and records of the U.S. government for personal benefit. Let's go down. What is the fine or imprisonment here, Jason? If you look where my finger is, you'll be able to.
It shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both.
Yeah, 10 years for each count.
You're going to get a lot of mileage out of the oven mitt.
Well, so the point is here it is undisputed. It's admitted by the Clintons that they took all of Hillary's records, all of her government records for the 4 years that she served as Secretary of State were housed in either Chappaqua or Washington, D.C., maybe other remote locations. And after that period, from after February 1st, 2013, through December 5th, 2014, how many speeches did Hillary Clinton, we have it somewhere, but how many speeches and how much money did she collect, as she was trying to put together a war chest to run for president? Just under 18 U.S. Code 641, again, I'm not a lawyer, I would have thought that just on that statute alone, you could send Hillary, each count, 10 years, or Hillary and Bill and Uma and anybody else involved in this conspiracy to harvest the records that were created and obtained while she was Secretary of State for the benefit of the Clinton Foundation, for the benefit of Clinton Foundation donors. There have to be thousands, if not tens of thousands of cases of that actually happening, and a serious Manafort-style investigation where you start raiding homes of donors and foundations and the Clintons to get the financial records. A serious investigation, unlike the one being conducted into this Clinton Foundation, it would seem, under the Sessions Department of, in quotes, Justice and the Wray Department, Federal Bureau of, in quotes, Investigation. A serious investigation of this should have brought, indictments on this crime a long time with just this one alone.
Even a comedy investigation should have brought indictments.
Yeah. So if we go back into the slide, this 2008 Memorandum of Understanding that was signed, it was dated November 16th in one case and December 16th, the signature page in another. We've been through that umpty times. The fact that they agreed to enter into this thing back then, in between the election and the inauguration, to me proves there was an intent to commit this conspiracy. They should have entered into a contract with surviving parties on both ends of it. They did not do that. It was an MOU, and it was with the presidential transition entity that disappeared after the inauguration. I mean, it was a monstrous arrangement. It was obviously not meant to be enforceable, and clearly it wasn't enforceable. So you start there and you say, why do we need what I'm distressed to see with this very expensive government that we have, both federal and state governments? Everything takes far more time than it should take. Yeah. Again, I'm not the lawyer. I'm not the prosecutor. It has taken me 3.5 years to assemble all this evidence and move it around the world to these various departments and get people instigated.
Very effective of you, by the way.
Well, of us, So So that to me, that's if you want to nail these people, you start there. It's 10 years for each count. Barack, how are you going to explain to Michelle that she's going to be going over to the Easter Island Head clubhouse you're trying to put up in Chicago if it ever gets built, but you're going to be spending the rest of your life behind bars over this? How do you explain that to her? When are you going to start singing?
I just can't wait for that to happen, Charles. That's like better than the Super Bowl to me.
So the next important point in 2 is, we can hit the arrangements that were made to have these secret servers and non-secure devices were definitely approved by somebody in the Obama White House. And here's an old Thomas Paine story.
Yes.
Saying that I put this up because I anticipated you were going to say something about Benghazi. This is from June 15th, 2016, saying that Google, was Google the only one of the 3 firms that just didn't show up last week to the House of... Yeah. So they worked together to create this server system.
That is just crazy.
To frustrate the ability of the House and the Senate and others. I mean, Hillary was very well able to make sure that there was no Inspector General at the Secretary of State, at the State Department, and then they worked with Google to frustrate the ability of Congress to actually perform oversight, not simply of the State Department, but of the Obama administration. And
then Schmidt left as soon as Trump got in there and started dropping the hammer.
Exactly. And so, I mean, this is something that, I'm not somebody who believes, I'm not anti-business, but I am somebody who believes that when you have an unchecked profit motive and, people...
What do you mean an unchecked profit motive?
When you have people who say, you know what, my duty is just to make as much profit as possible, damn the restrictions, damn the laws, and you create this unstable situation where there's multinational companies that operate around the world, and they can sit in the boardroom and like at GE, and they can say, well, which law should we follow? We operate in 120 countries. What if American law conflicts with Cayman Island law? Why shouldn't we follow Cayman law, not American law? And so you can have this unchecked profit motive where the guys at the top and the directors at the top and the other the globalist accounting firms and law firms and consulting firms can say, yeah, your first duty is to your shareholders. You better make sure you maximize profits. Well, should we make sneakers and using slave labor and to maximize our profits? Yes, of course. I mean, it's not our problem to protect these people in Vietnam. We're not American. You've got to maximize profits. I mean, when you have the unchecked profit motive, unfortunately, it can lead you into this kind of place where you have a George Soros, where you have a Jeff Immelt and Jack Welch, frankly, at GE, and whoever runs Nike, they just run amok. So you need to have responsible people, and it's not a question of political party, who stand up and say, no, it's wrong. This is a country, the American country bears a stain on our history because we were so involved with slavery for so long. We, of all countries, operating in 2018, should be able to stand up and say, learn from our example. Look at the mayhem in the streets today in 2018 over descendants of slaves, who feel properly put upon, though they themselves have had no direct experience with this, and now we're letting a company that's a member of the Dow Jones 30 potentially employ slave labor, either maybe in contractors that provide product. It's outrageous. So, if we go back into the slide here for a second, this whole deal that the MOU and these secret services, they had to be approved by Barack Obama's people. Maybe again, he was off having Kobe steak and martinis and champagne and doing what he may do with Michelle. Maybe he didn't know these details. He had plausible deniability. But somebody senior, Hillary Clinton was reporting to somebody, and if it wasn't Barack Obama, let's find out who it was. Who approved this deal? It's a simple question. If you're Donald Trump, you're the President of the United States, you pick up the phone and you say, Beauregard, you didn't recuse yourself on this one, buddy. Okay?
Beauregard Sessions.
Beauregard's a little Jeffy boy. You didn't recuse yourself on this one. I want you in my office tomorrow morning with an extensive presentation explaining to me exactly when and who approved the arrangement to allow Hillary Clinton to have secret servers operate non-secure electronic devices. And I want to know every single person in the previous administration who operated using alias emails conducting government business. I want to know every single person tomorrow morning, Beauregard. That's tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And I get up and start tweeting around 6, so I'll be able to receive you for your, your waffles, Waffle House breakfast. Well, actually, I like Waffle House, actually. I don't have waffles, but I like scrambled eggs.
But those places are junk, Charles. On a serious note, I'm becoming concerned with the amount of time that's passed that Trump hasn't, declassified the FISA stuff and made calls for this kind of thing or pushed out.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I don't know a lot of Arabic, but I spent when I was 19 years old, I had a summer job working in a car factory in Cairo.
Wow.
And it's a
what
long.
the hell are you talking about?
I did, and it was why is another question, but I won't answer it. Anyway, and I learned that in Arabic it's a great language because when they curse, it's a very fiery, even if you don't know what they're saying, it's obvious they're
mad.
cursing.
Yeah.
So when you want to get the attention of a waiter, I learned in Cairo, you don't just put your hand up the way my father might do at the Yale Club and say, "Excuse me, sorry." You go, "Yes!"
Whoa.
And these guys like jump up.
Yeah, everyone who's viewing just jumped up.
Well, that's the way they do it. They had that voice, and I did it for effect, in that voice, and it causes the waiters to like jump, and they come running to you. And that's what Trump should do. And I won't yell it again, but I mean, he should say, "Listen, Beauregard, what the WTF, mate? I'm the president."
Order some lamb.
Exactly. So let's get on that.
Yeah.
So when we look at the history here, I don't think 2016 was the first election that Obama and Clinton attempted to rig.
I agree.
I think that by rights, frankly, Mitt Romney should have been the 45th president of the United States. He should have won the 2012, not because he deserved it, but because we should have known the truth about Benghazi prior to November 2012.
Right.
And that's the real scandal here, that they obstructed release about the truth of what was going on, that the United States government, it's the Democrats, the only person, I keep saying this in relatively recent history in my family, who ran for political office, ran as a Democrat from Montana, and in 1904. But, the Democrats rightly were jumping up and down about the whole Iran-Contra stuff. When Congress says you're not going to go into Syria, you don't go into Syria. But they didn't stop Hillary Clinton and McCain and Barack Obama. And look where we are today in Syria.
Mess.
And look what was going on in Libya. A kinetic military adventure. That's the way we got around. That's what Obama and Hillary said. It's not a war. It's a kinetic military adventure. So, I mean, had we known the truth about Benghazi, which even today Barack Obama is saying, no, you don't have a right to know that truth. Had we known that truth, Mitt Romney, like it or not, he would have been 45th president. For all you who don't like Donald Trump probably wouldn't have run for president.
Because you would have had Mitt Romney
for
again.
2 terms.
Right. Well, all the things that you're describing, Charles, really kind of illustrate the path to complacency that has them all so shocked that the plan didn't continue to go on.
Right. And so then, if you think back to 2010, this whole thing, if George W. Bush had put somebody in after he was selected, as Hillary Clinton was fond of saying in her a term and a half or a third as senator, if he had gone and said, "You know what, Dick, we're going to get the meanest, nastiest person we can find to go in to the IRS, and we are going to aggressively target every single progressive and Democrat charity that's out there, and we are going to, if the rules are however they're written, we're going to enforce them vigorously, only going after or disproportionately going after left-leaning groups, and then we're going to hide all of the emails that explain that we did this and make it impossible for when people get concerned about this, and we're going to do it right before the election cycle in 2010 because we're concerned that, you know, the midterm election, as people are fond of saying now, that after a president wins a convincing election, as Obama did in 2008, the first midterm election is very dangerous. So there's a motivation to try to chill the opposition base. And that's exactly what the Obamas did. I believe that Eric Holder and people in the IRS, there were multiple meetings. They were not supposed to have occurred, so they didn't occur in government offices. They occurred across the street in hotels and stuff like that. They hid the records of them. They obstructed the ability of Congress to find out what was truly going on. And if we hit this Jay Sekulow story on the 17th of April, 2017, here's Jay Sekulow saying, you know, it's time to go back over to re-examine the targeting of conservatives. Now, why is this a significant date? April 17th, 2017. We have these recent texts out from Strzok and Page that occurred April 10th, April 12th, and April 22nd. And here's Jay Sekulow, now one of the president's top legal advisors, saying, you know what? We better go back over this ground. So the swamp looks at this and says, wait a minute. If Trump goes down this path, you know, we're in deep trouble. We better get Trumpy.
And that's where all this stuff is coming from, with the fake op-eds and the stupid book from Bob Woodward and all this crap.
Right, and we have to these things. And when I went to our mutual friend Jerry Corsi, as I always like to try to do, you know, and others, but when I went to him and I said, you know, Jerry, you know, this is what I think is really going on with the Clinton Foundation. It's tied to this Lois Lerner story. And he initially said, that's ridiculous. How can you say that? It's too complicated.
Dr. Corsi said that?
Yeah, and I said, but I knew I was right. You know, I'm just teasing. But it is complicated and it is correct. It's obvious. I mean, it's two sides of the same coin. One person in the IRS, Lois Lerner, was able to sit hard on the Clinton, not the Clinton Foundation, on conservatives to make their lives miserable. And there are a lot of rich conservative people who have foundations and would be very worried about what it is, I think, going to happen to the Clintons and to the donors to the Clinton Foundations, about the massive penalties that will go against them, tax penalties, financial penalties, criminal penalties, jail terms, etc., for committing charity fraud. You know, the Republican and the conservative people are worried about that because they take these laws seriously. On the other hand, the Clintons, you know, and you know, now Obama, what law? Prosecutorial discretion. You don't prosecute your political rivals. You can't do that. Actually, yeah, when they're criminals, yeah, we do actually. That's sort of what we do. So here we see Jay Sekulow mouthing off in Fox News, and as a guess, you know, the conspirators. Jay's a good lawyer. They've attacked him personally, you know, for his charity and law practice, arguing that he's been improperly compensated, et cetera, et cetera. But you put this into the timeline. And we really need to do it. And Katika's doing a comprehensive timeline. LaFleur Productions is doing one. Some other people are doing them. It's all very helpful. When you put this into the timeline, you begin to see, you know, not this garbage in this book, what never happened, but you know what's truly happening. You begin to see it.
Yeah.
So I think that Donald Trump got on Obama's hit list by 17 May 2011. Now, why am I that specific about that date? You hit the thing. This, we mentioned Dr. Corsi, he's a good man. This book was published, the hardcover version was published on May 17th, 2011. But prior to that, a drudge siren went up I want to say, right around the time that Barack Obama killed Osama bin Laden. You know, that's what everyone's saying. Barack Obama killed him, when in fact Rob O'Neill killed him.
Right.
And
look at that.
Yeah, again, this math doesn't make much sense either.
Well, this is all, you know, sort of friends of Bezos, and these are the people who bought the book.
Well, again, when you do a weighted average, you take...
It should be like 3.5.
Well, you take 0.57 times 5, right? And that's 2.85 right there.
Oh, but it is close to 3.5.
2.85. This is 0.24, that's 0.12, that's 0.02, and that's 0.32, and I don't think it adds up to 3.8.
Huh.
But maybe people out there can check me and tell me I'm wrong.
It's Bezos math, Charles.
That's right, it's BS math.
BS math.
But, you know, there's no question that this book, as some of my good English friends say, cheesed off Barack Obama, and maybe rightfully so.
There's a good deal of speculation that the whole entire, quote unquote, murder of bin Laden was to cover that book.
Well, right, that's what I'm trying to say. So before the book was published, and the way books work, and one of the reasons, I have a very patient book agent, but the way they work is there are a limited number of top people in the publishing, if you're trying to produce a mega book, who all talk to one another. And the top agents all know one another, and they're all trying to land, in venture capital parlance, it's the next unicorn, the next gigantic book. And so if you go and you have a good book proposal and you circulate it, it's going to go to the major book publishers, and therefore it'll go right back to the Clintons, right? And right back to the Obamas, and right back to the very people who are the target, should be the target, and are the target of ripening criminal investigations. So the last thing I want to do is show my cards to them. So, of course, I haven't done that. And the wider group has not done that. But in this case, Jerry Corsi had this book, he had a contract, the Clintons had to know what was in it. They're very wily if you read the other books about getting embargoed books, and Obama certainly most likely got this. So there was a drudge siren on the book, and within days of the drudge siren, there was this announcement coming out. I forget when Osama was killed. Was it
May? Definitely, yeah, I don't know.
Can we look it up on Google while we're talking?
Yes, absolutely.
That's not too complicated.
Death of Osama bin Laden, May 2nd, 2011.
Right. So that took the air.
So you're saying that they knew in advance of the release of the book that this book was coming out, so they said, we better go stage a...
Well, I'm not saying that, but I am saying let's look at the timeline now. So this comes out then, and when was Obama's birth certificate released? The digital version of the book, the story that is so plausible that a lawyer would be sent on a government plane to fly out to Hawaii
to get a
and
PDF.
and come back and say, hey, look, boss, I got your birth certificate. Let me show it to you. It's a PDF file.
Yeah.
So when did that happen?
This
is April 27th. So that's right after the drudge siren.
The funny thing is, you see now, look at this. They've conveniently left out, down here is a 1961 where the 1 is very clearly red and the rest of it is black ink.
Right.
Interesting, it doesn't even play.
Right.
Well, there's a video that I made on Crowdsource the Truth about the Barack Obama birth certificate, and of course Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio have done a lot of forensic work with that birth certificate. There is zero doubt in my mind that the PDF document presented on whitehouse.gov is in fact a total forgery.
Right. So if we go into the slide, we start looking at these timelines. So all this is in May of 2011. We look at the if you hit that WikiLeaks Podesta email link, this is the search results of what happens when you punch in Simpson Thatcher. There's 75 results. We're not going to pull them up now because it's too much. But if you go in some of these, there are attachments. And remember, with the WikiLeaks stuff, they're not even the Clintons. I mean, ordinarily you'd send Lanny the Snake Davis out to say, obviously this is all forgery and invented, and there's this problem with it and that problem, and of course, look over here and don't look over here, and what. They haven't done that. They have not attempted. Either anybody at Simpson Thatcher or anyone else has attempted to say, no, this is bullshit. This never happened. So
what specifically, the birth certificate you mean?
No, this is not on birth certificate now. This is showing you the trail of Simpson Thatcher was called in around October 27th, 2011, so well before the 2012 election,
right,
to dry clean the Clinton Foundation, ostensibly as part of a 10-year review of operations. Now, from 10 years from inception. Well, math not being a particular strong point of many lawyers, October 23rd, 1997 is when they were set up. To say it was set up in 2001, that gets you into the issue of, there was something set up in 2001. It was called the Clinton Family Foundation in Chappaqua was set up then, and that none of the interrelationships between that foundation and the main Clinton Foundation and the affiliated foundations is ever teased out in any of the filings as is required. But they put out this ridiculous smokescreen that this retention of a highly acclaimed law firm. Full disclosure, I worked there for one brief summer before I went to the car factory between college and freshman year. Here's 75 emails, and there are attachments to these emails that include billing records that tell you exactly what Simpson Thacher was looking at, and it seems to me what they were looking at were the conflict of interest between what Bill was doing and what employees of the office of William J. Clinton were doing to garner personal income for Bill Clinton in projects using the resources of the Clinton Foundation to raise a hedge fund for Mark Mizvinsky, to do all that kind of. There's 75 emails, and you could find more by hitting on the name of the individual lawyers. That's an alias email for Chelsea Clinton.
This is
AJ66, and
wow.
I have to get to the bottom of what that means.
Why is that?
I don't know.
At NYU, did she go to NYU?
She was studying, I think, at NYU.
Huh. So you're describing what I guess it was Doug Band called Bill Clinton Inc.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so my point here is that if you go back into the slides, I submit to you that I don't think the 2008 election was rigged. I think that just our deciding to anoint John McCain guaranteed that we weren't going to win that election because he had so much baggage that even I couldn't vote for him in 2008.
I don't think Sarah Palin helped him much either.
I think he did. She did, actually.
Wow.
He was stronger than John McCain, in my opinion, but I couldn't vote for the ticket. So I don't think 2008 was rigged, but I think 2010 was rigged, and I'm certain 2012 was rigged. And had the voters really known in 2014 how many secrets Hillary Clinton had retained, still were in her possession in 2004, had the Tea Party apparatus been able to stand up and say, we was robbed, we were abused, Lerner is out in 2013, the Romboxy stuff in 2013, Hillary's out there changing the bylaws of the Clinton Foundation so that Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton are running it starting November 2nd, 2013. Had all that stuff been known in 2014, then I submit to you that in that midterm election, Republicans would have gotten a disproportionately higher share than they actually did get in 2014. But they were successful in withholding that information because, Mueller was the head of the FBI then, and Comey was the head of the FBI then. They sat on these investigations. They did not let the public know what was truly going on with Anna Chapman, with Bill Campbell, with the Clinton Foundation, with Laureate, with all these different things. They were able to keep that information away from we the people. Yeah. And so they rigged that one.
I think they've rigged them all, Charles. It's just been more obvious in some.
I'm just
than
going
others.
to the more recent one, and then who made the decision? I won't scream the Urias out there, but which I think is spelled in English translation of Arabic, Y-A and then R-E-I-S. But again, Beauregard, give me the slip of paper that explains to me, you're president, and I'm not obstructing justice. I just want to understand, how did who were the people who signed off on Hillary Clinton, pulling up, the big rig and taken out of the office in the Foggy Bottom there, whatever records may have been taken out of there, and who was the person who, was there an exit interview of Hillary Clinton by February 1st, 2013, and who signed off on her, on every signature of who signed off on her, saying that it's okay to keep all these records? When was an Inspector General appointed for the State Department? What did that Inspector General find out? How did this, review ultimately materialize of her potentially mishandling classified information? I want to know the entire backstory on that. And I don't want you, don't say that you're not a detail-oriented person, Beauregard. I'm a pretty damn detail-oriented person, as you're going to find out, because I want to know every chapter, every verse, every comma, every semicolon. I want to see the entire timeline. I want to see the log going in, going out. Who came up with this? Where are the meeting notes? Who signed off on this?
How could the Attorney General not be detail-oriented? That's sort of bad.
I know.
I don't really think we want that.
Yeah. So if we go back into, wait a second, could you hit that again? This is, Comey told his friend, Lawfare editor Benjamin Wittes?
Yes.
Is Comey's friends?
Yes, that's what we've been talking about in all the Peter Smith stuff, is that Ben Wittes has been basically for months running a transmedia marketing campaign to disseminate lies. And when we did the story, I'm sorry to say this, Charles, but when Tom sat here and told me I didn't know what I was talking about Peter Smith with the evidence, I went to the hotel room, we spoke to the cops, we went to the Walmart that he went to, we reviewed the video, we spoke to the bus drivers, all the bus drivers that drive that bus. I know more about the evidence of the Peter Smith death than the cops in that town. So I think there's been a very concentrated effort to cover up what happened with Peter Smith because he's the ideal scapegoat now that he's dead. The circumstances surrounding his death are totally bizarre, make no sense, do not jive at all with any of the evidence, the crime scene photos, none of that. And it was really weird how stories, remember like days after we had Tom on here, a story came out in Gateway Pundit that I sent to you, and you said, this is from last year. I said, no, it's from today.
Really?
They just republished the exact same crap from a year prior. Jack Prosovic put it out, Gateway Pundit put it out, and Tom basically told me I was an idiot.
Well, sorry about that.
Oh, I don't mind. A lot of people tell me I'm an idiot.
So if we go back into the old, evidence is important. So and you've got it. So this whole idea that what we're talking about, that Obama's saying, you know, we don't go after our political allies, rivals. Oh, really, Brock? Really? So you didn't target James Rosen. You didn't target Cheryl Atkinson. You didn't target James Rosen's parents. You didn't go, you know, after multiple people. You didn't make all kinds of FBI agents and other people sign agreements, which are unusual, that they wouldn't say anything. And you didn't go after William Campbell. You didn't go after all these different people. You didn't have your thugs do that. Bill Clinton didn't go after his political rivals. Give me an effing break.
That's all they do.
So 18 U.S. Code Chapter 115, if we hit treason,
something that so many of these people we talk about are all too familiar with.
well, should be, levies war against them, so I don't think they've done that, or adheres to their enemies. Now, whatever adhere to their enemies may mean, like, you know, taking money through your foundation from an enemy of the United States of America to, let's say, enrich allies of, let's say, Hezbollah, that would be treason, I think. Is guilty of treason shall suffer death or shall be in prison not less than 5 years and fined under this title but not less than 10,000 and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. Okay, let's go back into the slug. This is, you know, pretty extreme. Death would be a rough one.
I've found something here that's talking specifically about what does adhering to.
Now, what does it mean?
Well, it says Article 3 of the United States Constitution, Section 3 defines treason and places restrictions on its punishment. And what do adhering to the aid and comfort? This person says, when a phrase is interpreted by the judicial system to have a specific meaning, it's called legal construction. This is probably too long for us to go into right now.
But if we go back into that link, let's look up sedition, because I think sedition is more up our alley here. And you were the one who looked this up before. Well, let's try rebellion or insurrection first, because that's fun.
That seems like half of Washington.
Okay, whoever incites, sets foot on, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this statute or not imprisoned not more than 10 years. So here's 18 U.S.C. 641. There's your 10 years, multiple counts, another 10 years for this one. And, you know, tell me that, you know, these idiots that we saw in the Kavanaugh hearing and others standing up, you know, and saying, you know, you can't listen to Trump. He's, you know, he's under it.
What about the person writing for the New York Times is doing exactly this?
Right. I mean, this, to me, this is rebellion or insurrection. This is what. Now let's go into sedition, because that's fun. Not so much fun.
Seditious
I
conspiracy?
think it was that one or the preceding one? Oh, it was seditious conspiracy, I'm sorry.
That's right.
2 or more persons. Do we have that? I think so. conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force, or to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States.
Wow.
They shall each be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. I mean, so look, I mean, just in this 18 U.S. Code 2384, you've got a bevy between that and 641, 18 USC 641. Again, I'm not practicing law, but it would seem to me you have a bevy of nice charges that you can go after. And in addition, I would point out, and we don't have the code referrals here, section referrals, but you can impeach somebody after after they've left office. So you could impeach Hillary Clinton, and you could impeach Barack Obama, and you could convict them.
That would be so cool.
That would be fun, yeah. That would and then you could have a book burning ceremony of all Hillary Clinton's books, you know, and shatter the glass ceiling as well.
Oh my God.
But so anyway, this is serious business. If we go back into the slides, we're joking about a little bit about this, but you know, thank you for having 67,500 subscribers. And I think you've got additional ones, perhaps on Crowdsource, the Truth Too. Probably more like 75, 80 all in. Maybe there's some overlap. But the crowd can really help by circulating this video and say, look, you know, watch this video the guys just did today, and now circulate it around, send it, tweet it out to the attorneys general, tweet it out to the leaders of these various nations that have given money to the Clinton Foundation. You know, tweet them out to Bernie Sanders and say, dude, you know, why didn't you give an F about the damn emails? Why didn't you care about that? You cost this country a lot. You know, you shouldn't even dream about running again if you can't stand up and say, you know, answer the question, why didn't you get up there and say, these emails, this private server, this is serious stuff. It's treason, it's sedition, it's conversion of public property. It's obvious. You know, why didn't you stand up and do something about it? Are you two just on the take to the Clintons? Is that the whole deal here?
Well, and you know, Charles, you've spoken about Bernie Sanders. Of course, everybody knows that I initially wanted Bernie Sanders to be president, but in large part due to the work that I've done with Jan Weinberg, which, thank you for introducing us, I've realized now that Bernie Sanders was a player in this play, whether he did that voluntarily or because he had no choice. He was never going to win. He was designed to just, you know, sort of corral everybody around him and then knock them out, just from without even being a politician, from a simple strategy point of view. If you had someone who was as popular as Bernie Sanders, why wouldn't Hillary make him the vice presidential candidate? That would have basically guaranteed her win.
I don't know. I think the people who were inclined to support Bernie, and it was interesting, there were a number of them who came out of the woodwork and were promoting heavily before I met you, my work, including, you know, one person, wonderful, won't mention her name, a young lady who you know, put together this volunteer group of several thousand people who were circulating my work and having Ask Me Anything sessions on Facebook and links and all this kind of stuff. There was a level of enthusiasm among the young college-educated crowd, the young millennial crowd then, that just looked at the Clinton sleaze and looked at the notion of Bill Clinton, you know, leering on "Take Your Daughter to Work Day" in the White House again. You know, it just didn't sit too well with that crowd, and I don't think you could ever put, you know, a team of rivals together kind of government with Hillary as president and Bernie. It just wasn't going to work.
Got it. Even if they had take Ariana Grande to the White House Day?
Yeah, I don't think,
you
mean for Hillary?
For Bill. He seems to really like her.
They could share her.
Love the music, man.
That's right. But the crowd has really been helpful, and I would encourage and thank the crowd in advance, you know, which is maybe overstepping my bounds, for please, this I think is already shaping up as one of our better podcasts. I hope you will circulate this and you know, light a fire, particularly under people who are running for office in contested elections, you know, who stood up and said they don't want Hillary back in. If they're a Democrat, you know, why don't you stand up and have a Spike Lee moment, Beto O'Rourke, you know, down there running against Ted Cruz. If you're serious about challenging the status quo, you should come out against, you know, a go slow approach on the Clinton Foundation as a Democrat, Beto O'Rourke, you know, and certainly Republicans, you know, need to stand up and say, look, God damn it, the only congressperson who is willing to run hard with this in 2016 was the great Marsha Blackburn, who's in a tough race in Tennessee. You know, she deserves high honors for pushing on this and continuing to push on it. Why aren't other Republicans doing that? So if the crowd can, you know, in this election season, start, you know, tweets, emails, phone calls, you know, into the staffs whose names are all publicly known, why aren't you standing and doing something? Into Donald Trump, into Eric Trump, into Ivanka Trump, into Jared Kushner. Anybody who has a Twitter account, you know, send these presentations out, send these videos out, tell them to get on the train here.
Yeah.
We're trying to help. You know, so go to the next one. Somehow. There. So this is, you know, an interesting blog here. I'd never seen this before, and I haven't, you know, thoroughly checked it out. But it sort of seems to, if it comes up here, this is a janitor's view.
It's an interesting name.
Yeah. And I like this. I mean, you know, I don't know if this truly is a janitor, but, you know, a janitor of a large operation will know a hell of a lot more about what's truly going on than even possibly the CEO.
Yeah.
And you would be wise, you know, some janitors are hopeless, but many are not. And this is basically an incredibly long post. Here, I'm a retired janitor, studied for an MA in U.S. history, and a mathematician, historian, social scientist. It's pretty interesting.
Right.
He's been blogging since 2008. This is a very lengthy thing that talks about...
This is a remarkably similar story to someone who we were talking about just before the broadcast.
Yeah.
Very well educated guy who just
Canada.
happens to be in this job.
Right. So we look at you know, this, and the idea that Mueller and Comey and Rosenstein have been covering up, you know, true espionage. And let's think about, you know, what was going on prior to the 9/11 and after 9/11, that they would have been involved covering up, you know, the true extent of real damage that had happened, you know, so as not to make elements in our government look stupid, resonates with me. And I think...
Look stupid, you mean for not stopping the attack?
Right.
Or look stupid for planning and executing an attack?
Or both. I mean, it's just, you know, the point here is that the American public, you know, the notion that these people in both parties can stand up and say, look, we have some serious problems. They're so serious I can't tell you what they are. And we therefore need a gigantic budget, you know, and I'm not going to tell you what I do with the money, you know.
Sounds good.
You know, it's like that guy. I get a huge chuckle. There was this guy, and this happens too often, this guy, and I think the EPA told his boss, you know, he was not showing up for work. And finally the boss said, well, listen, dude, I got to ask you a question. I know you're a member of a union here, and you're protected. You know, where have you been? Oh, I can't tell you. I'm in the CIA. And it turns out he wasn't in the CIA, and he was just, you know, pissing off. He wasn't working for like a long time, for like 10 or 12 years.
Where was that?
I think the Environmental Protection Agency.
Wow.
So you know, we can't have this. I mean, it's not like this notion that, you know, the way that you're disciplined now, if it's 17 known security services, and why we need 17 is beyond me, and how many unknown ones, that we have all these black budgets, these dark budgets that nobody knows about, and people running about that nobody knows what they're actually doing, and there's no accountability. I don't think there are many people in the United States of America who are for that. And I think across this political spectrum, you know, Republicans, progressives, you know, I think would be an overwhelming majority that would say, all right, fine, we do need spying outside this country, not inside this country, and we need to make sure it's not inside this country on Americans.
Oh, right.
And we do need to have a robust budget. So you guys who want to be spies, why don't you do this for me? Come back to me with some evidence of or estimates of what you think other countries spend on this. Right now, let's tell us how much we've spent compared to these other countries.
And where the hell did it go?
And why do we need to spend so much more than France is spending, and so much more than Germany is spending, and so much more than Japan and these other rich countries? You know, why are we spending all this money? Where did it go? I think people across this country want to know that. And it's not that we then look at the history, go back to 1945 to make it bipartisan. You don't look at this history and say, you know what? We have covered ourselves in glory with these spy services. These guys and ladies are amazing what they've done. They have not screwed up, you know, country after country after situation after situation, you know, around. And so there needs to be some governance here. I'm not as familiar with this as you are, Jason, but this shirtless pundit guy.
Oh
who
yeah,
sent me
Zach.
Zach, he sent me this. It's a good piece.
Yep.
And he points out, and again, I'm not a journalist and I don't study journalism, but he goes into this long, well-written post. He's a good writer.
Yep.
And Medium is actually Bill Clinton used Medium to attempt to debunk accusations on the Clinton Foundation. But this is really a good forum and a great writer, Zach. And he goes back to the long history of the ways in which security services have used journalists.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, it's a logical thing.
Of course.
And that the leakers, in both parties of all persuasions would pick out their favorite gullible journalist, of which on financial matters, that's most of them. And you give them this 26-year-old, this 28-year-old, this 35, this 70-year-old, hey, I'd like to, I've been watching you, I'm very impressed with your work, yes, Mr. President, that's nice. And I want to give you this gem. Oh, yeah, okay, great. I mean, these people are not, it would seem, smart enough to understand that they're actually being manipulated, which is why we like to do it the other way. I don't take suggestions from other people. I just go into the public and I do what's out there in the public domain, and often it's by chance. I mean, Nike, on the most recent presentation, was completely by chance. I didn't choose to employ Colin Kaepernick. I didn't choose to make a spectacle over Serena Williams. Nike did. And it came to my attention, and that caused me to look at their financial statements.
Nike's up to a lot of weird stuff, for sure. And Zach does a great job. I'm going to have to review this. I didn't get a chance to look at it yesterday, but it has been occurring to me that if in 72, when did Watergate happen? Somebody just goes and selects, at that point, a pretty young, up-and-coming journalist and says, hey, by the way, how would you like us to destroy your life? Or behind door number 2, you could become one of the most famous journalists in the world. We'll give you this Pulitzer Prize, which they're shuffling through. Nobel Prize, no Pulitzer. That's good. Take that one. And they establish all these idiotic organizations that they can nominate people for or recommend people for, whatever kind of fake crap they want to put on their website and run around touting that they did that. But in the case of Bob Woodward, what if he's just been lying for the past 40 years and putting out the story? He's part of Operation Mockingbird, and here they roll him out for Trump. There you go. See, Zach and I are on a wavelength. He is a very good writer, and people should definitely check out Zach Haller on Medium.com.
Right. So, and on Twitter as well.
And on Twitter, the Shirtless Pundit. He's been on Crowdsource the Truth a few times.
So he's arrived.
Hey, I like Zach.
Yeah, it's good. So this one here, this plot has really deep roots, and this is, I had never heard of this thing. What is it called now? The Conservative Post.
Yeah.
Conservative Daily Post. But if you look down a little bit in the story here, first this guy Greg Vogel.
I've heard of him.
And now there's something called the National Clandestine Service.
What the hell is that?
Sounds pretty secret to me, but it's not
the spookiest U.S. government spy.
And this guy, Greg Vogel, I wonder what happens when we click on Greg Vogel.
Now, Charles, what are they doing? Just coming up with new spy agencies every day?
Yeah. It's like, they're not as bad as South Africa. Topic Greg Vogel. I guess there's nothing new here. South Africa had, they liked acronyms in South Africa under apartheid, so the security agency was not, it was like the Man from U.N.C.L.E., it was called BOSS, the Bureau of State Security. So National Clandestine Service sounds a little bit better than BOSS. But apparently this guy may have been a person who was sort of in charge, and I've now also seen this Chalet or Shallot, or however you pronounce it, I've seen that as well. And again, the crowd, we need to check this out. I'm not, maybe this is to put us off the scent, but
I'm thinking of Ken Vogel, who's somebody else.
He's different, that's Politico.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is supposedly somebody who may have been the person in charge of putting this plot together to use the resources of Five Eyes to target Trump and, make it difficult for him to win, and then if he did win, make it, impossible for him to run the country and get to the bottom. So this is something that we need to really study carefully.
Absolutely.
So if we go back into slides because I'm mindful of the time. Today we only have 6 pages, so we're not going to take forever. Joe DeGenova does a lot of appearances. Our mutual friend, whose name we shall not reveal, suggested that this is a short, I think it's 8 minutes. It's really worth listening to. I've been on WMAL, thanks to Joe. I think it's a Maryland station, Baltimore maybe. But this is a very good 8 minutes, well worth people's attention. It's got so far 77,000 views. And Joe is a real patriot. And Joe, I've had the great pleasure now of knowing him for a number of years. He has been very helpful. He is working his butt off. And he claims that the Mueller investigation is, as I like the phrase, moribund, near death.
I like that.
In which case, I don't know, I'd love to know who this conservative treehouse Sundance dude is. But this is pretty funny. The Canadians, because they have managed now this Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland team, are beginning to be among my favorite people because they are always wrong. And whenever you find arrogant people who are always wrong, those are great people to know, because you can just do the opposite, whatever they say. And this guy, Ezra Levant, has had me on his Sun News show, which is no longer there, but his Rebel, I think it's called, once or twice. But basically, apparently, they had decided that they're taking on the tyrant. This is Chrystia Freeland, who is a rogue scholar and now Minister of Foreign Affairs for Canada. And they're betting that Trump will be hobbled after the midterms, which is a bet that is not a good bet. And particularly when they roll out, IRS tax reform 2.0, which might pass before the election, if they do that. They've decided in Canada, screw it. We'll get a better deal after the midterm elections, is what this is alleging. Now, talk about
with NAFTA and trade and everything.
Right. In other words, when Trump is hobbled, they'll have more negotiating power, and if he's kicked out, they'll be dealing with a different administration. So
look at that. How does he get a maple leaf on Twitter?
He's from Canada.
But so what? I know people from Canada that don't have that.
Ezra Levant's a pretty famous guy and a good guy. But anyway, I just went to this lunch, which shall remain nameless, where a participant, because you're not supposed to explain who was there, who was well placed, who served in a high position, actually served in a high position in the Obama administration, and is a good guy.
And not a descendant of Fidel Castro like Trudeau.
Right. His take was that because he specifically brought this up at the lunch, it was a small group of like 7 of us, he specifically said that if Donald Trump loses the House and loses the Senate, what he will likely do is become more anti-trade inequality. He'll band together with the Sherrod Browns, and the Democrats will be elected and find that issue that even Chuck Schumer was against Chinese taking advantage of us in trade. And that, if Trump and the Republicans do not do well on November 6, 2018, that this bet by the Canadian government will work out even worse for them than if Trump succeeds. So this is really just stuck on stupid. This is really very bad. And then here we have the UK government, the May government, is tripling down on this whole idea of Skripal, where Putin is now saying that they've identified who did this, and it's civilians.
British civilians?
Let's see what it says.
See, because the other thing that I found very, very interesting about this anonymous op-ed is that it made the point of bringing up this Skripal nonsense, which there's just been no investigation, or well, maybe now the Russians have done one. Well,
so this is a very interesting issue because, to me, when I look at, it's the old Latin question, something like,
Cui bono?
Whoa, very impressive, Jason Eady.
Hey, I'm very
good.
Stupid as I look.
No one said you're stupid.
Well,
you're a visionary.
Not no one, but no one right here.
No, you're a visionary. You came up with this crowdsource the truth idea. That's pretty damn good. So anyway, who benefits from all this? It's GCHQ. It's Alexander Downer. It's these Christopher Steele and these cross-Atlantic groups of shifty people who go between the Sidney Blumenthals, who go between public, in quotes, service and private practice, enriching themselves off crooked crony deals. They're the ones who have the most to lose by this. And Skripal, let's not forget, was somebody, the Obama administration bargained for the release of Skripal. When we had Anna Chapman and those other spies, I think it was 10, we traded them for whatever it was, 4 or 5 in Russia, and one of them was Skripal. So maybe Skripal, knows a lot more about what was truly going on with this spy ring, right? Because remember, he was a Russian spy who then we flipped him, and then the Russians caught him. Maybe he knows a lot more about what William Campbell knows about, and maybe they need to get rid of him, and they're sending a message to him. And maybe there are a lot of dirty hands in the UK and in the US, and maybe we should be listening up here.
I'm curious what he means by there's nothing special there, nothing criminal. I assure you we'll see in the near future. One thing I think everybody needs to be aware of when you see these English quotes attributed to Vladimir Putin is that that's been translated by somebody, and there's always the possibility that the translation is not exactly, the subtleties of language, what he said or meant. And also, as we're reading this, it just occurs to me that many people, as recently as yesterday, Cody Snodgrass said that frequently intelligence agencies, whoever they are, will use, cutouts or operatives from other countries. So if the British wanted to do this, they just could, go get any 2 Russian schmucks they can get their hands on and say, go put this poison on that guy, and they say, oh, the Russians did it.
Yeah, Victor Badenov, right? Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Right, Badenov, Boris Badenov.
Boris Badenov.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
So if we go back into the slide for a sec.
Yes.
All right. And I'm loving this. Now, the Investors Business Daily has actually been very nice to me on the Clinton Foundation, but they know what they're talking about, right? And here they're saying we had the presentation on Sunday where I provided some hard evidence that in no way, shape, or form is this present economic recovery Obama's doing, right? And you're going to see more and more people reach the conclusion that we quickly reached, that this is more bunk out of the chief snake oil salesman.
I mean, that was like the most ridiculous set of speeches ever made by anybody in a 2-day period.
Right, and and I love it when people refer to themselves in the third person, or thanks Obama. Well, you're welcome, Obama. Aren't you Obama? Yeah, I'm Obama. It's ridiculous what he was saying. He really is.
He was definitely stoned or something. He was so...
Yeah, and it was like, it would be like me trying to explain my idea for, whatever the right phrase is, for creating a ballet.
You're not an expert in ballet?
Ixnay on the ballet front.
Or writing a play. Choreograph
No. I'm not a dramaturge or whatever the thing is.
I don't know anything about that.
I know nothing about that.
Well,
but it's just more and more people who know actually what they're talking about. It's just crystal clear that when you take an economy and you say to the people who've created all these jobs, you didn't build that, and you raise their taxes and you throw a whole bunch of regulations on them, and you go around the world apologizing for the best things that America has ever done, and then you open up our borders, you infuriate our enemies, our rivals, you create, you have a hand, as Hillary and Obama admit in the Podesta emails, of creating ISIS.
And a fake birth certificate.
I didn't go there.
It's creating all these things.
Yeah, it's absurd for you to stand there and say, this whole economic recovery, I'll explain it to you. Come on up to that barbershop in Coming to America. I will explain to you, don't ask what's in this brownie. You'll love it. Afterwards we'll go have as much food as you want. But it's certainly not Obama's doing. And here we have this Washington Post. I don't like to give them, but this is an important story. I don't know if we can see it.
Well, I think I did pay the Washington Post.
All right. Remember, democracy dies in darkness. So it's proving that out.
Democracy dies in darkness, but how many times do I have to pay these schmucks?
Well, don't do it now. If you haven't, it's fine. No, let's.
But
what it says, the headline says, the average family in America makes $61,000 per year. So if you can cut the link, it's fine.
Yeah.
And the point of this, though, if the average family makes $61,000 a year, please explain why Hillary Clinton makes $225,000 for an hour-long speech. Please explain to me why that isn't a bribe, particularly when the speech is like, we need to move forward, not backward. Where's my check?
But that's her public position or her private position?
Exactly. But I mean, that's the way they always speak. You'll notice they speak in this really slow, 18 RPM or whatever it is, very slow, idiotic cadence. So the middle class is actually doing better, and I think the easy message for Donald Trump and others out there is, do you want to go backward?
Yeah, you like money?
No, just turn this right. We need to go forward, not back to the Obama, Clinton, Kerry, Gruber years. We just don't need to go back there. Let's put that in a box, wrap it up, put it in the sub-basement, and forget about it. That's what we need to do, right?
Right.
So here we have Jamie Dimon, who made an ass out of himself today in a very short period of time, and instantly backpedaled. He said something like he might run for president. He mocked Trump's IQ and his inheritance from daddy, and within scant minutes came, I should not have said it, I'm not running for president, proves I wouldn't make a good politician, I get frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this to me, Jamie Dimon he's a billionaire manyfold over.
Goldman Sachs, or
not Goldman, actually. He started out working for the man who ultimately built up, Sandy Weill, who built up several big firms, and then he had a falling out with Sandy Weill, and he went to Bank One, made another fortune there, and then Bank One merged with JP Morgan, and he's been running JP Morgan for a while.
Why do they still have a Bank One building on 32nd Street?
They have all sorts of buildings. I mean,
but why not change it to Chase or whatever?
But so the point is, here's this guy mouthing off saying, I could beat Trump, and then like within minutes, people are saying, Jamie, what kind of an ass clown are you? Right? The guy's not going to lose in 2000. And by the way, we're one of the largest banks in the world, and you know that government in Washington, yeah, they get kind of pissed off at people. You really want to do this, Jamie. So this just gives you a sense, actually, of how Donald Trump is. When you work, we under, really you could give both of the last two presidents a hard time. I mean, George Bush would spend, a month every year at, why you need to spend your time perpetually clearing brush in some remote corner of Texas. And
skink hunting, I thought.
What hunting?
Wasn't he hunting some kind of stupid animal?
I don't know. And then Barack Obama's off there skeet shooting when he's not at Martha's Vineyard or in Hawaii or whatever else. I mean, here you have a person who is working 24/7, tweeting constantly, bypassing the punditry, disrupting, shaking things up, accomplishing things right and left. And you're not going to get very far mouthing off saying that you might be able to do a better job. And Jamie Dimon does have quite a track record of wealth creation. And he is, I think, probably richer than Trump. But here's a guy mouthing off and immediately regretting it. Now, on the other hand, you have this person who's the smartest woman in the world is this dumb. If we hit this Daily Caller thing, she has tweeted out this absurd story about Kavanaugh, that he referred to birth control pills as abortion-inducing drugs. And this is just simply not true. It's been instantly debunked. A nice picture of Hillary Clinton.
But I thought she likes abortion because it creates jobs, or what was it?
That's the daughter.
What did Chelsea say?
I failed math, but I got a PhD.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a winning family. I guess we did have some bleeding here. What do you know? So then,
how did we miss that?
I don't know. We were rushing. But hit this one. Okay. How many times did we hear with the whole Kislyak thing? Did we hear that between the election on the 8th of November 2016 and the inauguration of January 20th, 2017, that the Trump team was guilty of violating the Logan Act because they were negotiating with foreign powers while there was one president, Barack Obama, still in power? How many different times have we heard this? And here's this idiot, Lurch, bragging about in an interview with radio host Hugh Hewitt to promote his new book, bragging about that he has been negotiating with the Iranian government behind the Trump administration's back to try to put this Iranian deal together.
That's crazy.
Look, dude, you know, you just are, you don't have this right just because you've got perfect hair and you know how to marry rich women and, you know,
eat a lot of ketchup.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't give you the right to try to put together a really bad deal that Trump rightfully tore up, you know, and get in the middle and give the Iranians the false hope at this crucial moment that they might be able to get. That wait until after the midterms is probably a subtle, not so subtle message that this idiot is giving, this nattering nabob, you know, is giving to the Iranians. I mean, and why people listen to him, why my alma mater, you know, Yale, employs this doofball.
Well, he's a bonesman.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, that doesn't give you an automatic right to come back and be a visiting lecturer or professor or, you know, blowhard.
Well, but it makes him a secret society scumbag, unfortunately.
But anyway, I mean, this is just, there's such a double standard. Here, this is in the Free Beacon. Is there anything in the, you know, all these morons who show up on, you know, Morning Joe and pontificate, Larry Tribe, you know, of course this is a violation of the Logan Act, it's very, very serious. Of course, nobody's ever been prosecuted for that. But
right, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, why is this okay? And I don't know what the bleeding is. Oh no, there is no bleeding. This is just, when, and I'm not going to say Urias again to our president because I wouldn't be disrespectful. Well, when the hell are you getting it around to declassifying these documents that, you know, have got to be declassified? Don't say they protect sources and methods at this point. It's baloney. Rod Rosenstein signed the fourth renewal request for a FISA award against Carter Page that was completely bogus. Why did he do that? When did he do that? Who knew about it? What judges approved it? We, the American people, have an absolute right to know. God damn it. Go to the next page.
Getting worked up, Charles. See, I wasn't rushing. I was being efficient, Charles.
There you go. So let's go back a little bit through the timeline here, and we won't pull up because I'm mindful of the time. I want to keep to your 2-hour minimum there, a maximum. So in 23 minutes, somebody you may know, we pulled this up before, calls for the Clinton Foundation to have an IRS audit on the 16th of March 2015. Okay? And then we know, and that's, well, I guess thank you for this, and this one has now 82,700 Facebook shares, that's respectable.
Yeah.
You know, and 17,000 comments.
Wow.
Which is also respectable.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, seriously, you know, guys in the IRS, ladies in the IRS, WTF, you know, what's going on here? I mean, you can't say that, well, all right, nobody noticed it. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody cares about it. Yesterday's business, move along. You know, you can't sit there as blowhard Chucky Schumer and, you know, blowhard Nancy Pelosi and say, the president's running these massive deficits. He hasn't learned our lesson. We've got to narrow the deficit. Here you have a chance to narrow the deficit. You have a chance to go to, you know, gigantic pots of money in more than 50 U.S. private foundations and say, Bill Gates, Rockefellers, Pritzkers, the Johnson Foundation, a whole bunch of foundations, you guys blew it. You know, and the reason you gave money to this Clinton Foundation is you thought we were going to get on the right side of Hillary Clinton, President Hillary Clinton, and stay on off of her wrong side. And for that, you were willing to break the law and route money to these fake charities because you felt that was a, you know, admission ticket to being on the right side of the Clinton train. Well, you screwed up, okay? And you're sitting there, and we have you dead to rights. You have to report. You have to be audited. We know how much money are in your foundations. And your downside case, if you fight us, is we're just going to shut all of you down and take your money. It's that simple, okay? Or if you cooperate, we might not do that. We might not be quite as rugged to you. You could do that. I mean, this is, I think, totally within the bounds of what Donald Trump could do. So why the heck aren't you doing it?
He's got to. He's got to do something.
And why? We just checked, a bunch of us checked, this IRS person that he's, you know, asked to be confirmed has still not been confirmed.
Yeah, what's up with that? There's nobody in charge of the IRS since when? I mean, we were talking about this in like March.
I think there's been nobody really in charge of the key portions of the IRS since January 20th, 2001.
So it's like a bus just driving around with nobody at the wheel. Why should anybody pay taxes? What are they going to do?
No, they should do that for
It
sure.
could be like Field McConnell and just not pay taxes.
No, this I'm not suggesting that, but this is the portion that sits on top of charities. There's nobody in that who is honest. You've had Lois Lerner and people following Lois Lerner, and
But she was the head of the whole entire IRS, no?
No, she was the head of the charity section, the one that sits on top of these private foundations that should have gone after the Clinton Foundation, referred it to prosecution to the Department of Justice. She didn't do it. So 2 days after...
Put Andrew McCabe there.
Yeah, 2 days after this article appears, and I'm certainly not suggesting that Donald Trump decided to form a presidential exploratory committee because he noticed that article. But nonetheless, 2 days later, he did. And then we know that by the 10th of July, and there's a much more in this timeline. A lot happened before this in March, early in March, through the 10th of July. But by the 10th of July, 2015, we've been through this before. The FBI, in fact, opened an investigation, not a matter, into Hillary R. Clinton mishandling classified information. And the goofball, James Comey, says, all right, I've got a brilliant idea. We'll call this the mid-year exam. Now, why did you pick that name, James? Tell us. Why did you call it a mid-year exam? Why did you say it was a matter? Did that comport with the rules, the domestic operations guide of the FBI? No, it didn't. You know, how serious was this? You know, why had the same facts, the Cheryl Atkinson test, had the same facts, you know, instead of having Hillary Clinton's name on it, if George W. Bush had done the same thing, had operated, you know, for 2 terms as president, the president's business from the Crawford Ranch in some, you know, in the outhouse, in some electrified server in his outhouse or, you know, whatever, garage, above the garage, if he'd done that and then taken all those records back to Crawford and then said, oh yeah, when, you know, what are the daughters' names? One of the daughters
Barbara and...
whatever, one of the daughters gets married, you know, that's when I realized, holy smokes, jumping crawdaddies or whatever it is, that's when I realized I had all this government property, so I deleted all the personal messages and stuff on this server relating to my daughter's yoga classes and whatever. Didn't involve anybody from the, you know, who could have stress tested. I just think you could trust me. And then I turned it in almost 2 years later. You know, we'd have riots in the streets over that.
Yeah.
But when Hillary does it, oh no.
The George Bush theory is slightly implausible simply because I don't believe the man can read or write.
Easy. But anyway, we know that a supposed investigation was open on July 10th. We know that a senior State Department official sent a letter in to dopey James Comey saying, dude, I mean, come on. I'm pretty senior. I've been around the block. We got this situation going on here where I know that Hillary Clinton broke the law. We can hit that link, and then you go to page 122. This is the actual subsequent one that you hit this one here. And then you go to page 122.
Does it download it or
yeah? You go to page 122, and you'll see the letter. It's to Dopey James. It doesn't call him Dopey.
Dear Dopey. DJC. Which page?
122. Not 913.
Yeah, it's sad that this. Wait a minute now. How did it go from 59 to 13?
I don't know, Jason. It's the thing at the top. You got to go 122.
We've got a good way to go here.
You got to double it. Keep going. Oh, look at the top now. We got a 122. 10 more. Next. This is the UPS buttons, the tracking thing, showing that there was something sent. Now look at this. January 10th, 2016. Dopey James Comey, director. From, it doesn't say who. Initialed on each page, yes. Okay, and it doesn't say that, but it's redacted. But this is basically a long letter, partially redacted in key places. It's basically, in so many words, saying, I know Hillary Clinton broke the law. Okay, I have a high security clearance. What's going on here, in essence, is that our president is saying, you report to me. You know, okay?
Holy
Forget
cow.
about the Constitution.
Have people read this, Charles?
We've done a show on
But
this.
this specific passage,
Right.
the purpose of this letter to you as Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is to provide evidence which should lead to the conviction
Right.
of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for lying to a Congressional House committee investigating the situation surrounding what happened September of 2011, right, Benghazi.
Well, okay, but this is, it's a conspiracy theory according to the
right,
great golfer.
Barack Obama, right.
The skeet shooter.
I missed this first one and I was like, what? Arrest her now.
Right. But, but you go, it's very lengthy and it's a long letter and it goes in places and it basically says, that people around here are regarding this as a game, and so many, I'm paraphrasing, they're regarding it as a game in which we all have to support the president because he decides, what the law is. We don't have to respect the Constitution, we need to support the president. That's explicitly not the case.
Yeah.
The president's supposed to support the Constitution and defend the Constitution from all people of this country, from all enemies, what?
Foreign and domestic.
And domestic. Foreign and domestic. That means everybody.
Yeah.
But instead, so here's this guy, January 10 lady, sending this letter in. So what does Dopey do? Dopey says, yeah. So what does this person do? He comes in on January 27th. We don't have that link here. I think it's in dump 6. But he comes in and he says, where's Dopey? He didn't respond.
Tweeting his Christmas tree.
Right, and so he comes in on the 27th, and by the 1st of February 2016, John Giacolone, who is, or however you pronounce his name, forgive me if I mispronounced it, he's the guy leading the mishandling investigation, and he says, look, you didn't tell me about this, Dopey? You get this letter, you don't tell me about it? And now there's this walk-in and I find out about it? And what the, WTF, I'm out of here, dude. So then they put in McCabe, to bottle it up. They've got Strzok and Page, and we've got a lot more of the timeline. I just wanted to keep this, in perspective and short. But on the 2nd of August, 2016, Jerry Corsi's book, Partners in Crime, came out that does mention me in the first
Corsi
paragraph.
is prolific.
Yeah, he's done a lot of books. But if you hit that link, this is down there talking about the Clinton Foundation. I wonder why it's not eligible for prime
shipping.
That's interesting. The audio CD is damn expensive. Why would one used cost $900?
Maybe it's signed by Dr. Corsi.
That's impressive.
Or maybe someone is crazy and figures put it out there, and academic book guy has got a lot of positive ratings. But I don't know, that is a lot.
But anyway, this is a book that was done in part on my research through December 2015. And so, the crowd has had the benefit of my research since December 2015. So a lot of this is very useful and helpful, but it's not informed by information that we found later. So anyway, this book comes out, and then Dopey James issues this absurd letter. Okay, absurd letter. And here's the great FBI vault has the actual letter that is, basically saying we've reviewed the laptop, nothing there, nothing to see. Our great technicians were able to go and look at all this stuff. I don't think it says here. Maybe it does. Yeah, the FBI investigative team is working around the clock to process around that clock over there. That's where they've been working. And I gave them the strictest of instructions. Don't look at the incriminating evidence that would get Hillary Clinton and me and a lot of other people serving prison. Just don't do that. Work around this clock. The McAllen's over there, the Chardonnay's over there, the steak's over there. Just work right around there and don't find what is so obvious.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't like that. Nor would Hillary. This letter is a fraud. It's a complete fraud.
Why is James Comey himself?
Right. And what is his book here? A Higher Loyalty to himself. A higher loyalty.
It's on the bottom of the stack,
right,
as it should be.
It should be, with comments from Cheech and Chong.
They put Tommy Chong in jail for selling bongs, which is like arresting kangaroo.
Yeah, and I think didn't Comey put Martha Stewart personally in prison? I believe he did.
Like literally,
No,
James
he was the
Comey
prosecuting
physically
attorney.
put her
No, he
in?
was the prosecuting attorney. I think.
I think you're right, but why?
Yeah. So anyway, this happens. Then Beauregard gets confirmed on the 8th of February 2017. You don't need to hit that link. And Rat Rodenstein, the 25th of April 2017. Now this is kind of significant to me that he gets confirmed on the 25th of April. Then and interestingly, actually, let's hit the link for Rat because it's interesting. It shows the vote that Rat got in the Senate. Next one down, yeah. Yeah, I think you have to hit the whole link. There you go. It says, 94-6.
Oh, it's again with the Washington Post.
I quickly was able to see it. The vote says that you got 94-6. Rat gets 94-6 out of the U.S. Senate. And I think, what did Sessions get it now that I think about it? Let's hit that link, if we can. One above it may say in The Guardian what he got. I don't think he got any 94-6. The final tally was 52-47 for Beauregard down here, but Rat gets 94-6. Now what does that tell you?
A lot of people love the Rat.
Right, a lot of Democrats like the Rat. And why would the Democrats like the Rat April 25th, 2017? Because here's Jay Sekulow saying on April 17th, you know what? We ought to go back over this this whole, targeting of Tea Party conservatives. So the Rats are getting nervous about that, and they say we need to have one Rat of our own to stop this mess. And they put the Rat right in there. That's my working theory. And then on May 9th, Trump fires Comey. I don't think he fired him. We won't need to hit that link because it's CNN, and that would hit their link traffic. That would make it go up 100% today. And then by the 17th, the Rat says, you know what? What I'm going to do here is, we need to have a special counsel because we're so conflicted in the Justice Department. So I'm going to appoint Robert Mueller, the most conflicted person I could think of. I mean, Bill Clinton couldn't do it because he surrendered his law license. Hillary couldn't do it because she surrendered, she had problems with her law license. Barack Obama and Michelle couldn't do it because they also had a problem with their law license. I'll get Robert Mueller because he is as conflicted a person as you can possibly be. And let's put him, and let's tell him, Bob, why don't you put on your team as many angry, partisan Democrats as you can, because I've got your 6. I'm Rat Rosenstein. I'll make sure that, that we're not going to go after the Clintons. None of these investigations are all going to be around-the-clock McAllen Chardonnay specials, out there in Utah and in Little Rock, whatever. We're just going to be burning, pretending that we're investigating. And Bob, you've got to take down, you've got to get Trumpy. That's what you got to do. You've got to get Trumpy. Otherwise, we all go down together.
Yeah.
That's my working theory.
It makes a lot of sense, Charles. He certainly is a weirdo-looking dude, and I love going back to that photo every time.
And so this one here, Neon Nettle, is interesting. Here's Tom Fitton saying, shut her down. It's time with his latest revelations. Judicial Watch says, shut down the Mueller probe over these ridiculous new revelations of last night and continuing through today.
Yeah, they just got these new texts.
Right. Shut her down. The nerve of Stroke, media leak strategy is in his text, and he says, well, that's actually what I meant by that is we're stopping leaks to the media. That's what when I congratulate Page over here for doing a leak, I was actually congratulating for stopping a leak.
This is what makes me kind of sad, because this is exactly what Larry Klayman is working on, and I feel like if these groups could work together, they'd be more effective, but there's a history there that makes that difficult. But Larry's FOIA lawsuit that Emmett Sullivan found in Larry's favor, they were supposed to turn over communications from the special counsel's office to Freedom Watch by September 4th, but on the 4th, they claim that there was a computer glitch.
Oh, and everything was destroyed?
No, well, we don't know that yet, but they just said they need more time, which is sort of typical lawyer
That's called a convenient computer glitch. Yeah.
Well, that's called when you get paid by the hour. You want stuff to take as much time as possible, and when you have incriminating evidence, you want a glitchy computer that deletes.
And you know what? We believe that we will have this glitch solved, and we can say with certainty it will be solved on November 7th, 2018, one day after the election. That's when it'll be solved. Nothing to see here.
Exactly.
So, come on, Mr. President. You gotta, this is absurd. Let's go to the final page. We'll do this quickly, which is the next page. All right, and we don't need to hit this link, the first link, but this Hurricane Florence, from what I can tell,
historic.
Is a doozy. And I certainly hope that, the people have listened carefully. There's rumors, there's in the news, 83-foot waves.
I saw a satellite image of it or something from the space station or whatever. It's like bigger than North America or something.
It's a very big storm, and maybe it dissipates. Let's hope it does dissipate. But it's a world of hurt heading for North and South Carolina, and I'm sure it won't take long for somebody to say, well, actually, what this is that Vladimir Putin has a separate, he has a hurricane bomb, and he's sending it to the coast, to kind of get us.
Well, they don't want to admit to that technology because then everyone will realize that the United States also possesses a HARP array that would be what that's blamed on.
But no, this is no laughing matter, and there's going to be a lot of suffering. People are going to lose their lives. A lot of property damage is imminent, and so it happens to be primarily a Republican country, but I don't think this is a political issue at all. This is a lot of people are going to hurt.
State, you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, North Carolina has been going more Democrat, but historically North and South Carolina have been Republican, pretty much. But this is an important, I refer to this in the past, and we're not going to go on a big tear today on it, but one of the most important things to look at, if we look at this chart, if we could move this up a little bit. This is a chart that goes back to 1962 and shows you this key interest rate, which is if you put your money away, you don't want to think about risk. And you say, look, I got some money, I don't need it, I want to lock it away for 10 years. This is the interest rate that you would get on the issuance date of the bond. So if you buy a bond at 4% yield and the interest rate goes to 8% during the life of the bond will price at a much lower value when you try to sell it. Because on a new bond you get 8%, but on your crappy old bond you get 4%. That means you don't want to buy bonds in a rising interest rate environment and hold them. Eventually you'll get your principal back, but the interest that you got will not be what you could have gotten had you traded back into the 8% or the 10% or the 12%, or you get really lucky at the top, you buy a 10-year bond at almost 16%, you think you're pretty smart. When you hold it for 16, at 16 as the bond yields go down, that thing goes way up in value. And so, but this is showing you the key takeaway from this chart. Your eyes, I can see they're going.
I'm just not understanding the explanation, but that's my fault, not yours.
Here, when bond yields are high, and when they drop, as they have dropped straight through to 2010 here, when they were, just
it looks bad
below,
to me.
That's actually good if you own the bond, because it means that the price of the bond escalates.
So you've got the one that's a 16%,
You're happy.
and then the new ones are below 4%, so the 16%
Very
one is
valuable.
hugely valuable.
Hugely valuable. And in addition, if this is the least risky thing in the United States to own, is this 10-year bond. So where my simple mind works is I say, okay, for any equity where I'm taking a real risk, GE could go from 40 as it did down to 12 where it is now, and while you're getting, or lower down to 2 where I think it's worth, because all bankrupt stocks trade at 2, as people know.
What?
That's just what experienced investors will say. They'll say all bankrupt stocks trade, all stocks approaching bankruptcy trade at $2 a share, because it becomes a warrant where you're speculating that somebody else, it's a long
will buy it for more than $2.
Right, or there'll be a restructuring result that'll be favorable. So, but the point here is, when you invest in a low risk thing like a U.S. Treasury bond, then every other asset should provide a higher rate of return than the least risky thing. So the way I think about that is equities, in my mind, if they're publicly traded, should provide a rate of return 2.25 to 2.5 times this yield. Private, 3.25 to 3.5 times, just my rough rule of thumb. So when you look at this type of environment going down, this is fantastic. You could throw darts at the wall when you're investing, and you're probably going to do well. And you could say, because when this happens, when interest rates drop, most assets rise in value. Conversely, when interest rates rise, as it looks like this is now starting to happen here, interest rates on this start to rise, that's a world of hurt for most other investments. That's why I've been warning people. I've been saying, listen, don't assume that these glory days. This is going back to really 1982.
Was there junk bonds and everything around
Well,
there?
in 1979, I know this just because I started work on June 9th, I think it was, 1980, full time. Back then, in 1979, the aggregate value of all junk bonds issued in 1979 was how much do you think?
I don't know.
Zero.
Because they invented it, right?
Well, no, they had junk bonds well before that, but they were called by a different name. But this is the interest rate environment.
Oh, so it was too high for that to make sense.
People are like, this is for the least risky bond. If on a U.S. Treasury you're paying almost 16% for a piece of crap, you can't sell it. There isn't a rate of return that you can offer people that's high enough to justify them taking a risk on crap when you can buy U.S. government debt that has no, in theory, risk for 16%.
Huh.
So this and you go back into this history. This, in the 68, 69 period, it was okay, but as you start getting into 1970, all the way to 1981, it was disastrous. It was a very...
I did something there. Oh, I see.
You're making the scale different.
Smart, yeah. Well, the thing that I'm thinking about as I look at this is how would this be affected by Donald Trump smoking weed with Joe Rogan?
Donald Trump?
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't drink, as you know.
I'm just joking. I know he would not do that.
Right. Although it would be humorous to contemplate, what Donald Trump would be like. I mean, Donald Trump is this way without drinking or smoking. And imagine what he would be like if he were.
So what does this chart mean for us, Charles?
What it means for us is that when you focus on this period here, are we re-entering the world of hurt? If we go and we say, all right, put your Karnak the Magnificent, we have the hat somewhere, but you put your Karnak
Great
the Magnificent,
Ortel.
the Great Ortel hat.
The hat's over there.
It's in the hat rack. Yeah. But you put that hat on, and a very simple choice to make on November 6, 2018. If you want to go back into this universe with irresponsible people controlling the House and the Senate, economically irresponsible people, hobbling Donald Trump, stopping the process of tax reform. This is the zone you're going into. World markets will say, wait a minute, this doesn't look good. We don't like this at all. And we'll have our interest rates. People will say, we don't like the direction this economy is now going. We don't. Donald Trump has changed the whole corporate tax system to make it a lot more interesting to invest in the U.S. Foreign money's flooding in here. People are bringing their and they reverse that and put in raise individual taxes, raise corporate taxes, is that idiot Elizabeth Warren wants to do, because it's because Massachusetts is working, and Connecticut's working, and California's working, and Illinois is working, not so much, and New York's working, and New Jersey. No. So this message here to me is we have a blip in the road, I would argue, going on right now, but if we resolve in this next election and give Donald Trump and conservatives, not Republicans, conservative economic types, the ability to continue this economic restructuring that's going on in this country, we'll get back into a place where other countries will look far worse, and I think interest rates will go down again, actually. That's what I think.
Well, unrelated to that, people are sort of hoping that Florence could possibly make its way to Washington, D.C. and dilute the swamp.
Or Chappaqua.
Right, exactly. That would be interesting. Obviously, we don't want anyone to get hit by a hurricane.
Right. So this is pretty interesting. People know I like zero hedge. Ranking the most vulnerable emerging market currencies, and here you go down this chart. And who do they say are really? This is Thai baht, Korean won, Chinese ruble, and Hungarian florent. But these are low vulnerability. High vulnerability, look at that, Indonesian rupiah, Indian rupee, Malaysian ringgit, South African currency, and the aptly named Turkey or whatever it's Turkish lira. High vulnerability. So one of the things that Donald Trump's economic revolution is doing is putting paid to the idea that what you should do is flee this country to manufacture whatever it is you manufacture or create whatever you serve in a low wage, high corruption, low governance environment where the currency is going to weaken, so the cost of whatever you're building there will go down, 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 and then turn around and transfer that stuff into this country. That idea is dead under Trump. And rightly so, because that idea guts the heartland. We've been through this in prior presentations, the multiplier effect of having, the parts suppliers and the intermediate assembly and the distribution, all that kind of stuff happen just inside this large market. You take all those pieces out when you do all that stuff in China or in India or whatever, and you just bring the finished good into our country. Plus you don't have the incomes of all those workers inside your country to tax. So I think, right now, to me, this election, thinking as an investor, this election has got some big choices to make, and the markets will begin telling you, the financial markets will begin telling you what they believe is going to happen. If we continue to see turmoiling in the merging, and which I now call the submerging markets, we continue to see that. That means astute investors are betting that Trump actually will win, will not be displaced in this election. If we start to see, globalist companies rise in values and the emerging, submerging markets put their heads above water, then I think we'll be seeing early warning signs that, Trump's in serious trouble.
Well, at least investors feel that way.
Yeah. And so this is a very interesting story. I was fortunate 30 years ago to, as a banker, to sell the company Champion Spark Plug Company to Cooper Industries for a lot of money, and $900 million, I think it was.
That is a lot.
But now this idea that, as I'm sure Obama would say, Volkswagen instead of Volkswagen.
Obama would say that?
Well, he likes to use the international pronunciation of Pakistan and whatever. Sure, Kerry would say it that way for sure, of course. But they're now talking about maybe using 3D printers for parts production. Now, the auto parts industry used to be an industry in this country that employed a hell of a lot of workers. Hell of a lot of workers. And then went into automated production. Now they're talking about, that's why we got rid of Champion Spark Plug Company, but now to use car parts with 3D printers, where you use minimal human involvement.
Right.
Except for making the 3D printer. But
well, someone's got to run it. But you know what? I hear what you're saying, but this is actually a pretty important innovation, because I've heard about, certain old cars, you can't get the parts, and as far as stocking parts, what you could conceivably do is at a Volkswagen dealership have this 3D printer, and then any part you need, they could just print.
Right, but I'm just saying this is going to, you were talking about how self-driving cars will revolutionize the transportation industry.
Right.
Now, this car part, you're going to see it in other things as well. And I really do think in countries like the United States, where workers are actually highly paid, human labor are highly paid, these idiots in the particularly the public sector unions, but in the private sector unions and the politicians need to stop the Fantasyland bullshit and pitting the boss against the and start saying, look, this is a real threat to human labor, and we need to figure out how to encourage humans to employ other humans. We need to make it easier to do that. Of course, you don't want people treating other human beings as slaves anywhere, let alone in this country. But the rules that exist today in this country are anti-employment. You think about it you've thought about this as a potential employer, would you rather try to do it yourself at this point, or go and take the risk of hiring somebody and then think through all the New York City laws and state laws and federal laws that apply to you, and then trying to fire that worker? And the rules are so Byzantine at this point, and they need to be made a lot easier, particularly to hire people who, if they're not hired, might be out on the street being cared for by these incredibly expensive bureaucrats who are overpaid, or keeping our tax burden high. So this is a very important development that we need to watch carefully. So here's one that's a head scratcher, and Donald Trump on the 11th of September took a lot of heat for saying that he's not in this particular story, saying that Eric Holder is effectively still running the Justice Department.
Whoa.
What the hell are Trump insiders doing blocking executive action on big tech censorship? The nerve of Google not to show up to Congress.
Right.
Some nerve. Who in the hell do you guys think you are at this point? And Google has got very fat profit margins. The people who created Google,
monopolistic.
I would argue it is, certainly.
Yeah.
And they're not above the law. And I think it's time to have a serious look. It is well past time, as somebody we know might say, to take a look at some of these companies and ask, what is the real benefit of the bargain that they're offering? How valuable is the information you give for free to all these companies worth? Who's getting rich off of this information that you're providing, that we're all providing?
Yeah.
And is that a fair exchange? And is it fair for these people to have such power that they can alter search results? They can, when you punch Trump in California, you get Trump's a Nazi, Trump is this, Trump is that, and probably when you punch Dianne Feinstein, and maybe you get the same result because they probably like that De Leon character.
The Chinese takeout menu.
That's right.
Well, but I mean, it's also, the article goes on to talk about, Alex Jones. I mean, this is being reported, ironically, on Infowars.com, and of course, beyond what's the value of your information, what's the value of them having control, as you say, over what you can and cannot see, whether it's in a search or, I mean, they now control YouTube. I'm curious to know how many people watch video content of any kind on YouTube versus television. Like, YouTube has supplanted broadcast television for a lot of people.
Right, rightly so.
But they control it in a way that's, you don't get an appeal period. If they want to strike a video and take you out, it's just like, we're not telling you what happened, but...
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's not a complicated equation. You look on cable TV or the main network TV, and what's the genius idea of Les Moonves when he's not too busy terrorizing his workforce? I know what we'll do. We'll do reality TV, and we'll get people to sign up and pay 30 or 60 or whatever the money is per month to watch reality that they could get by just walking out the front door. So it's no surprise.
Well, CBS also created this thing, All Access, where you have to pay, like there's no other way.
Wonder who came up with that name.
I don't know, right? But they had that show Strange Angel about Jack Parsons, who was the occult worshipping Thelema Luciferian NASA jet propulsion scientist who was hanging out with L. Ron Hubbard and doing all kinds of weird stuff, trying to,
A lot going on at the CBS.
Exactly.
Not much of it very good.
Right.
So we go back into the slides quickly. That's interesting. So a typo. China is far more. It's my fault. This is what happens with spell check. They don't. That's a word, but it's a typo. Anyway, we hit foreign policy. Sorry for that. I have been, and that is a Rothschild writing. I don't know if that's a real Rothschild, but just fake Rothschilds. But
Viola Rothschild.
in foreign policy, which is not Foreign Affairs, the Council on Foreign Relations Quarterly or whatever it is, but a different magazine. This is somebody, for different reasons, coming to the conclusion that China's economy is not as healthy as you might think. And I'm very much in that camp. I think the Chinese economy is a mirage, not a miracle. And I think it's a lot like Enron. When you put financial results out there, as with the Clinton Foundation, where 1 year you put some of the subsidiaries in and exclude the ones that are problems because you're stealing from those. In another year you put the ones that are winning and you don't tell people about all the regulatory problems that you have. Then the fact that you get Dumb Chuck and Dumb Chuck was actually dumb, the famous accounting firm, I'm making the name up, in China, to put their chop on the audit doesn't mean that anyone actually has checked the numbers. Then you start trading like a bunch of gamblers in the economy. That's what's been going on in China. and there's a massive debt crisis in China, bigger than the United States debt crisis, and it's a serious matter.
This is too.
Yeah, I don't understand, what we think we're doing in Yemen. I really don't get it. It's not like we can say, our Middle East strategy, it's working beautifully. Syria,
let's go bomb more people.
Libya, it's Iraq is great. No, it's not. Afghanistan is great. We've been there 17 years. Eventually, we'll get it right. I mean, before this, any president does more adventurism in the Middle East, there needs to be a serious discussion with facts and a serious review, bipartisan, including independents, review of the history. What have we done? What lessons have we learned? Why another theater now for this mess? Let's not hit this link, but Hungary and many other conservative European nations are likely to join the exit bandwagon, the Conga line, exiting this absurd idea of the EU, which makes no sense.
I had a bit of a debate with someone today as to whether Europe was a continent or a union, and I was like, boy, it's a continent. You gotta.
So you were how long were you talking to Hillary?
Yeah, exactly.
But this one is one we should hit, because this is our friend Katarina Blinova, who's got some great work coming out with Biljana tomorrow.
Oh, wow, yeah.
On Sweden. But she did this excellent interview explaining that, and it was obvious, I think, but it's well explained. Oh, look, a suspicious vehicle in Washington's Union Station. It's not good.
Huh.
Go through whenever I go to Washington, which is as infrequently impossible.
Yeah, I go there all the time.
But anyway, this is explaining that France and Italy are sparring over gaining influence inside Libya. And the reason they're trying to do that, Libya is a relatively small country in terms of population. I think it has 6 million people or thereabouts. But it has massive wealth, not just in the ground and the oil.
Gold.
Not just that, but investments over long periods of time in big European companies. So they have had a lot of wealth for a long time, and wisely they bought into some of these big, companies. And so these French starved for money and Italy starved for money governments are saying, we kind of like having a lot of influence in Libya. And this is a great piece by Katja getting into this. And I would encourage, when we think through politicians, particularly the crony politicians, Sid Blumenthal, the Clintons, the Obama, they don't want you to follow the economic bunny in Libya. But the reason we interfered in Libya is there was a rich plum to be gotten there in 2010-11 timeframe when, let's think, did anybody need any money in 2012 to do anything?
I thought they also were not enamored with Mr. Gaddafi's plan to convert the African Union to a system with actual gold-based currency, a gold dinar for oil trading, and challenge the dollar and the euro on the international stage.
See, I think a gold-backed currency is a good idea. I think the U.S. should do it.
As do I, but they obviously were like, we don't like that. We like printing as much money as we want and sending it to Iran. Kill that guy.
Right, yeah, that's not one of our finest moments. Now, you've been mentioning this guy, is that Arjen Kamfuis, or however you pronounce it, of WikiLeaks, who disappeared. And this is a story that purports to claim that they found
his stuff floating
his personal
around.
belongings. But then when you hit this radio EXE, you come back with a 404, I think. Or, 404. So I don't know if that's a true story, but I just...
Well, maybe it's so true they don't want you to see it.
Right, but I did put it up there just because I know you're interested in this. And I like to always close with this one isn't particularly funny, it's actually interesting, the final link here. I'm very interested in this idea of pre-contact relationships between residents. I don't like to call them Indians, I think that's an insult to the residents. But here's evidence in 1477, which is quite interesting because Columbus made a trip around then to Ireland, actually, and further west than Ireland, and we don't yet know why, but here's this reference that maybe people who we would call today Indians or Native Americans somehow, drifted out to sea and ended up in Galway. And it makes sense to me, back in, seafaring, ancient seafarers And if you know people who, my middle brother is a seafarer, and they just love being on the water. They love, people are really into it. You imagine a period back then in 1492 and before where, people didn't bathe, there was a lot of sickness.
Might as well do that on a boat.
Well, but get the fresh sea air, and you can protect yourself on a boat. You can see trouble coming by way of other ships coming at you. But if you're in a forest or you're in a city, you may not have the same protection. And you do have fresh air. You do have the ability to get fresh food, and you get to go all over the place and trade and have fun. So it's certainly, given the fact that the Phoenicians were active traders well before 1492. Many other cultures experimented, and given the nature of sea currents, which kind of operate like moving people movers underneath the water, you get in the wrong place, and you get on the wrong side of one of those powerful currents, and the next thing you know, you will find yourself 400 miles from where you should be. And in certain parts of the globe, when you look on a globe, it's not that far from Recife and Brazil to Africa. So it's far, but it's not that far, just the way the earth works.
When I was in New Zealand visiting Harmon Wilfred, I got a lot of education about the Maori, the
Right.
native people of New Zealand. Well, but they're not actually native to New Zealand. They're Pacific Islanders who built these giant canoes and canoed
Sure.
to New Zealand, which is like the most remote landmass in the world. And they spoke about how the strongest of them survived. They were, they ate a lot and got very fat, and they just went in these like canoes. And I guess it's amazing to think about how they could do that.
Right?
I would not want to do that.
You're a landlubber. As am I.
Exactly. I got
As am
this
I.
Apartment here in New York City with the supermarket downstairs.
that's
Why
right.
would I go in a canoe to New
Right.
Zealand?
Right.
Well, anyway, Charles, that was a fantastic gathering of information. It's always shocking to me how much you said there was a rich. What did you say? A bevy, a veritable cornucopia of larceny and felonies and.
Right. And what I would say to the crowd here, that without revealing sources and methods and secrets, what I would say is that November 15th, 2018 is shaping up. It's a question of fact. Look it up for yourself. It's the last date that a charity that has a calendar year end, which the Bill, Hillary, and Clinton fake foundation, real foundation, whatever it is, actually does have a calendar year end. So that's the last date that they can file their 2017 informational return. And to do that, because they're still much bigger than the minimum, they have to get a real audit. And to get a real audit, they have to get it from they can't get, what did I call it? Dumb chuck and dumb chuck.
BKD.
Or they can't get notorious BKD to do it anymore. And they can't get, the guy who's selling tacos in the taco cart to do it anymore. You got to get a real firm to do it. And when you look at the real rules that do actually apply, and consider this is the Trump era, and just, I know this top team is not going to want to assume that Donald Trump does well on November 6, 2018. I'll take that bet. But you assume that the House is intact, the Senate probably goes more in the direction of conservative Republicans than it currently is. You make that assumption, now you wake up on November 7th, you got 8 days to find this audit, and you've got, hopefully by then, a new head of the IRS who, probably, and the IRS team and other people know all about this Clinton Foundation by now. It's a mature investigation. You got no excuses. You got members of the crowd now stirring things up. And you can't tell the Clinton Foundation on November 14th, that audit you want tomorrow? No, we can't do that.
How long does it take to do the audit?
Well, if they have a simple choice, they can use Cohn-Resnick, who they used last year, who they shouldn't have used, because they couldn't use Price Waterhouse and they didn't want to use Notorious BKD. The first question is, are they using the same Cohn-Resnick, or are they going to now try yet another accounting firm? Well, in this environment, even though Beauregard is still there, and Rat is still in the Justice Department, in this environment, with all this attention on this, you're a managing partner of a big ass law firm, accounting firm like PwC. That remember, I think the managing partner of PwC was too busy looking at Ariana Grande to get the Academy Awards right. you're
Was she there too?
probably. I mean, that's a guess.
Yeah, she's a major distraction.
Lots of things to look at the Academy Awards. You know, why I can't get these awards? You know, that regime is finito.
Yeah.
And so I would argue, well before November 15th, 2018, these accounting firms, these law firms, these donors are going to say, this Clinton Foundation fraud, we're done with that crap. And that's going to leak out. That's going to leak out, and deals are going to be cut. What the Clintons like to do, when they get ultimately caught, they strike a deal where they try to cover things up. You know, they'll get somebody over here to confess to a smaller crime.
Yeah.
Say, I didn't know about. Of course, I was. You know me. I don't care about money. I'm Bill Clinton. You know, I don't care about that stuff. I'm trying to save the whales. I mean, the world. I mean, climate. Whatever I'm trying to do. Mr. President, there's somebody on Twitter. I mean, on your cell phone over here. It says you're supposed to meet them at the massage parlor, and you're 2 hours late.
Oh, I was at the IMAX theater.
Exactly. You know, they'll try that approach, and Barack Obama will say, "I'm out trading, changing. What did he call them? Mentoring a new generation of leaders around the world at my Easter Island egg house." You know, not so much.
I thought he was kite surfing with Richard Branson.
Yeah,
it looked like fun, actually.
Right. Yeah. And Hillary Clinton, you know, she's busy, you know, reading, what is that the book she likes? The Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round. The wheels on the bus fell off and off. Right. So the word to the wise here is that a lot of people, thank you, those of you who know I'm talking about, thank you for all your help. There's been a lot of hard work going into this around the world. It is paying dividends. Investigators are watching this and watching it closely. There's a money interest. These governments, you know, not to name names, but there are governments that have given tens of millions of dollars to these frauds. There's a way of getting that money back, and money is tight.
Yeah.
You know, the states, I mean, you're sitting in the state of New York, you're Andrew Cuomo, you don't want us to talk about your charity.
Andrew Cuomo doesn't even think America was great to begin with, so what the hell is he doing here?
But he's got a charity that's run by his sister.
Oh, come on.
It's
got to be a fraud.
And it is a fraud, I think. And that's the reason why New York State to date has not been as aggressively going after the Clinton Foundation, in my view. But you've got state after state that, you know, needs tax revenue. And you got these crooked politicians. You got Feinstein and her crooked husband with their crooked foundation in California. You've got, you know, states like California are structurally deficit-ridden. Illinois the same, Massachusetts the same, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. All of these states could have a piece of this Clinton pie, and of the rich people behind the Clinton pie, and could go after the Clintons and their donors and their advisors who are deep pockets, and get a lot of money back, and send a big message, you know, to the public at large that, you know, they're not just narrow partisan assholes, you know, who only protect Democrats and only persecute Republicans. They actually care about doing good works with charity. And I think that would be a good thing for the nation to see that actually happen.
I agree.
Not so much for the Clintons.
Not so good for the Clintons.
B-Rex.
I really, really, really want Donald Trump to prosecute Bill and Hillary Clinton. It's got to really be Hillary. He promised us that.
Lock her up.
Lock her up. That's really the main reason I voted for Donald Trump.
I think we need to do a song, Lock Her Up.
I can't. Songs
No, I think we could do that.
I
I think we could do that.
I have no musical ability.
I think we'll just take
do
another.
the video for
Right, no,
it.
we'll take another song. I'll do the lyrics, and we'll do it. And if there's people out in the crowd who can help us out.
Oh, wait a minute. We're going to be inundated with songs now, Charles.
Well,
please.
that's good.
Okay. Well, with that, Charles, I think we're wrapping up today. And of course, you'll be back on Sunday, unless there's anything else you'd like to say in closing.
No, that's good.
Well, thank you once again, Charles. It's always a pleasure to have you here. I know everyone enjoys hearing the information that you share. It's staggering, the level of criminality, the brazen, I mean, each of them in the top row there. Disgraceful.
The Sunglass Group.
The Sunglass Group, that's right. In the original poster, Danny DeVito is wearing sunglasses, but I liked seeing President Trump standing out from the crowd as a slightly different representation there. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and I especially want to thank our generous Patreon sponsors. It's a growing group. People who sponsor Crowdsource the Truth at patreon.com/crowdsource the truth have been enjoying now an array of exclusive programming, including Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard, We've got reverse crime scene engineering with David Hawkins. We've got more Payne with Thomas Payne, Michael Moore of True Pundit, and of course the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp. And each of these individuals bring an incredible array of information to the table. So I want to thank each of those people for participating in the shows and everyone who's been sponsoring. And Charles, I will see you on Sunday. And of course, tomorrow people can enjoy the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp at 7 p.m. only on Patreon. I want to thank everyone for watching and have a great night.